We've got an old school standoff going on here in the Kansas City area. Good morning, 6:05. Glad you are starting off the day with us on KCMO Talk Radio. So Missouri announcing, as we anticipated and told you about yesterday, a special session down in Jefferson City. And this will be driven by, yes, some storm relief for the St. Louis side of the state after they had those tornadoes that blew through a couple of Fridays ago. And also what we've told you about here on KCMO, this big infrastructure bill that is dubbed House Bill 19, that is for, crime labs, libraries, cancer research centers in Columbia. And then, of course, there will be an element that is funding for the Chiefs and the Royals. Now, Mike Kehoe, the governor of the state of Missouri, had a press conference yesterday, and here's what he said.
This is the same amount of revenue the state stands to lose if either team relocates to any other state. But local support is still critical in this effort, and this plan will require local contributions. So I'm asking legislators to work with us to keep these businesses in the state where they belong, the state of Missouri.
So that was Mike Kehoe, the governor of Missouri, yesterday in this press conference at about 10:30 in the morning, saying we have got to keep these teams. And we are going to basically allow them to bond out the amount of money that they would generate in and around a stadium. Now, there are still some questions. Devil's always in the details. We expect to have the governor on the show coming up later in the week. He should be joining us on KCMO on Friday morning. This morning, we are going to talk to one of the leaders in the Senate. Cindy O'Loughlin will be here on KCMO at 7:30. But we do have now at least a plan. That special session will begin this coming Monday in Missouri. The deadline is important because, of course, you have a June 30th deadline for the Kansas Star Bond offer on the table from the other side of state line. But here's the standoff. Nobody has been willing to call the other person's bluff just yet. What do I mean by that? So basically, Missouri is calling back for a special session because they are afraid that Kansas will get one or both of these two teams with their Star Bond offer ending on June 30th. You've got the Chiefs and the Royals saying, hey, come on, Missouri, get us something. We're up against it. June 30th is our deadline. The state of Kansas says it's not extending the Star Bond offer. And Missouri's like, well, we better get some deal on the table. We better get hustling here. But do you really think that if the Chiefs and the Royals go to the state of Kansas at some point in the month of June and say, hey, guys, could you extend that Star Bond offer one more year? Which they can do. They just have to vote on it. And it's not the entire legislature. It's just the small group of people that actually got through the deal to offer up the Star Bonds. It's like Senate leadership, House leadership. There's a handful of people that could extend this thing in a heartbeat. One of those is Kansas Senate President Ty Masterson, who is going to be on the show at 9 o'clock this morning. They'll extend that no problem if the teams ask them to. Why wouldn't they? They've gotten this far in the process. Are they really going to dig their heels in? I know that Dan Hawkins, the Kansas Speaker of the House, was on this show a week and a half ago, and he said, hey, we are not extending the Star Bond offer. That's not our plan right now. But then they're out. Like, why would they not extend it? Why would the state of Kansas, if the teams come to them and say, could you give us the Star Bond deal for one more year? I still think they would be just getting played, but you know what? At least it keeps them in the mix at that point.
Yeah, it seemed like I thought he was maybe a little more optimistic they would actually get something done as opposed to whether they would extend it. He seemed a little more optimistic they would hit the deadline at that point.
He seemed to think, at least that's how he portrayed it here on KCMO, that we'd have a team, meaning the state of Kansas, by June 30th of this year. That was the approach from Dan Hawkins on the show. But I still think we're in this weird place where if these teams don't feel like they have what they need from the state of Missouri and Jackson County and or Clay County, that they will just go back to Kansas at some point in June and say, hey, guys, we're not ready to make a decision quite yet. Would you mind just extending that offer another year? And you're telling me the state of Kansas is going to say no? Of course they're not. They're going to say yes. So that's where Missouri could call the bluff here. Missouri could call the bluff and say, we want to help you guys out as much as we can, as much as what is reasonable from the taxpayer. But right now, the state of Missouri feels like it's got a gun to its head, and they're basically acquiescing. I've talked to a lot of people in the legislature, and they're not happy about this special session. There are still bad feelings in the Missouri Senate about how the abortion issue was handled at the end of the term 2 weeks ago. There are also bad feelings about the House not passing this infrastructure bill that the Senate passed. So that's going to be on the table here coming up next week. There is a lot of hurt feelings. And yes, these folks in state politics are kind of like big babies sometimes. That is absolutely true. There are adults, not as many as there should be. But yeah, there's a lot of big babies with fragile feelings and big egos that far outweigh their importance in their community and in their state. But you know what? They got into politics for a reason. They have that. So now the question becomes, will Mike Kehoe be able to corral the votes for the Chiefs and Royals fundings? It's going to be very close. Very, very close. And here's the rub on this deal as well. You have got Kansas City Democrats, 3 Kansas City Democrats in the state Senate, who obviously want to see the Chiefs and the Royals stay. But the Senate Democrats are ticked off at the Senate Republicans, once again, over the abortion issue in the state of Missouri and how that was handled down the home stretch of the legislative session, the fact that the abortion issue is going to be back on the ballot. Democrats in Missouri are not happy with that. However, they may have to play ball here, no pun intended. Do Kansas City Democrats in the state Senate of Missouri want to be the ones who help sink funding at the state level to keep the Chiefs and the Royals in Kansas City? That is the $500 million question. They can be as mad as they want at Republicans, but in the end, do they say, you know what, I can't change that abortion deal. I do not want to screw my own city and potentially hurt my own constituents, many of whom may work at Arrowhead and work at the K 81 nights a year, because I'm mad about the abortion issue. And then will the fellow Democrats in other parts of the state, St. Louis, Columbia, will they also go along with it to support their fellow Dems in Kansas City? That is the $1 million, literally $500 million question here that we don't have the answer to. It is actually more likely that Mike Kehoe may have issues with his own Republican Party on getting this funding across the finish line for the Chiefs and the Royals. He needs a simple majority in the state Senate. That would be 18 votes. The belief in the people I've talked to is that they probably have 12 Republican votes that they can rely on. If they can get that number up a little bit, then you get a handful of Democrats to play ball, and suddenly you can pass that piece of legislation in a special session. But it still remains to be seen whether or not he's going to be able to get the bodies, get the votes he needs to get to the 18 number to pass a piece of legislation to help fund the Chiefs and the Royals. But I'm telling you, even people who are allies of Mike Kehoe right now, they are not happy with how this special session deal is playing out. And they do also believe in part that Mike Kehoe is feeling the heat. He does not want to be the governor that loses one or both of these two teams to Kansas or, God forbid, anywhere else. So he's starting to feel the heat on some of this in a way that a lot of people in his own party believe he should call the bluff on. We don't know what Jackson County's offering. We don't know what Clay County would have potentially for the Royals. Heck, the Royals haven't even really given us some kind of a plan on what they want to do and where they want to be. That's still out there. And the Chiefs are like, yeah, we want to build up the Truman Sports Complex. To what exactly? To the plan they had forth last year that failed in a vote? I mean, no one really knows. And that is a part of this that has also bothered a lot of Republicans in particular down in Jefferson City in this process. 913-408-7957 as we kick it off on a busy Wednesday morning on KCMO. Speaking of the Royals, man, suddenly they are once again hitting the skids. Mark's wearing his Mariners hat today. He's so embarrassed by the Royals. What is going on there? Man, that is not a good scene. But we'll keep it rolling throughout the morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. Coming up next, we had a hilarious topic yesterday where one political party is trying to figure out how to get a hold of young men. How do they win them back? They're going to dump tens of millions of dollars on this process, and some on their own side are even mocking them for it. We'll share the audio coming up on 95.7 FM KCMO.
Dave Ramsey here, and you're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now airing on FM at 95.7.
Speaking with American men, a strategic plan. Yes, that is the plan that the Democratic Party has rolled out as they try to figure out a way to win back young men. They want to win us back over. They can't figure out why they are hemorrhaging young men. They can't figure out why the group of people that they have basically treated like dirt for our entire voting lives don't want to vote for them anymore. I know they
talk about a bombshell.
They can't seem to figure it out.
That frat boy humor and stuff.
They don't like that. They don't like red-blooded American men. You love your country. You love the Constitution. You love red meat. You love working out. You love being a dude's dude. They've got no use for you. Now, if you're Mayor Pete and, you're a big fan of literally riding trains, you can become the transportation secretary. Choo-choo! All aboard. Love the caboose. If that's your thing, they welcome you with open arms.
He's a troubled guy.
That's what they love. But if you're just like, hey, all-American man, love sports, love this country, love what it stands for, and hold American values that might be considered traditional in nature, please, they'll throw you to the curb. You're part of the problem. And now they're going to spend $20 million to try to figure out what they did wrong. This was reported by the New York Times over the weekend, and it's been really mocked across all of media since then. New York Times reported that a new $20 million effort aims to reverse the erosion of Democratic support amongst young men, especially online. It is codenamed SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan. And it promises investments to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games, among other things. What do? We'll go after the gamers and we'll promote porn or something. Gosh, you guys you're missing the point. You're missing the point, but it is so predictable. We're going to spend $20 million on video games to try to talk to them online. Just don't be a freak show. That's all it's going to take. Love your country.
What all were they studying in that list? Syntax, you said?
Syntax.
And all kinds of stuff. Or you could just watch The President.
Yeah. That works too.
That's free. That's how you do it.
Yes. You can literally just watch Trump for one press conference and be like, oh, I could see why dudes would like that.
Mm-hmm.
I could see why men would like that. And even you had CNN talk about this last night after the report dropped from the New York Times. You had MSNBC somewhat mocking it as well. Here's what CNN was talking about last night. Dana Bash and Manu Raju, who was one of their Capitol Hill reporters, talking about this last night on CNN.
So you're the man here. I will not mansplain you. All I will say is, duh.
Yeah, I know. Look, they should have probably recognized this a couple of cycles before when this trend was growing very apparent. This was a huge problem for them in the past election cycle, and they need to figure it out because right now the Democratic message is really all over the place. What do they exactly stand for as they head into the midterm elections? But right now it's a hope, really, among the Democratic leaders that that voters will recoil what they view as overreach from the Trump administration. They will make the argument that they need to be a check on Trump's power and to use Trump's push to move ahead with this so-called big, beautiful bill, which rail about the tax cuts and that do benefit wealthy taxpayers, also other taxpayers too, but that does have an impact for them. And the impact on lower-income, working-class voters, the health care cuts that they can face. Can they make that effective argument to win back the majority? We'll see.
Well, yeah, that is a long way of Manu Raju saying on CNN last night, they have no idea what they're doing. That's what he came out and said is they don't know what they're doing, but they're hoping that basically just railing on Trump all day will be enough to win them back the majority in the House of Representatives next year. That's it. And then after that, they'll kind of try to hone in their strategy that is more about young men because the Trump thing's only going to work for them for so long. And it may not work at all, right? The whole thing may ultimately backfire on them. Trump's approval numbers remain stronger than they were in Trump 1.0. People know what they're getting. There is more of an appreciation, I believe, for this president than there was during his first term because, frankly, he wasn't as disciplined. He didn't know as well what he was doing. And we just lived through 4 years of pops. And people certainly didn't like that. So now they've taken a step back and they say, for all of Trump's flaws, and yeah, he's got them, damn, I appreciate what he's done for this country, and he's doing a much better job this time around as well. The text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, Democrats love wasting so much money that now they're wasting their own money in addition to taxpayer money. Yeah, that's true. $20 million to figure out how to talk to young men. They should just stream the show. Stream Joe Rogan's show, right? Stream Theo Von. Listen to the callers who call up KCMO. That's all it's going to take. Pete, did they name the program after Sam Britton? That's the guy, I think he was a guy, who worked for Joe Biden, who would wear dresses and got busted in the airport.
Luggage smuggler, yeah.
Yeah. He was stealing dresses out of women's luggages in airports around the country. And he was, he was a deputy secretary of spent fuel and waste disposition in the Office of Nuclear Energy from June of 2022 to December of 2022 until he got busted as a guy stealing women's dresses out of their luggages at airports around America. Yeah, I mean, they really had some gems, didn't they? But that's I didn't expect a Sam Brinton reference on the show this morning. Take a bow, texter. Call it a day. Call your boss and say, I'm not coming to work today. Pete said, I'm good. I'm taking the day off. I'm with you. I got your back. Can't say I'll keep you employed, but I got your back on that. That is absolutely fantastic. Pete, the CNN guy sounds afraid to lose his job. You can hear it in his voice. Unreal. He certainly sounded nervous talking about this, knowing where his audience was at. But, man, this is just the gift that keeps on giving. They are clueless. Coming up, a prominent Kansas City writer suddenly wants anti-mask laws. I agree. We'll explain next.
From the nation's heartland, it's Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
I agree with Toriano Porter, columnist in the Kansas City Star.
Talk about a bombshell.
I do, I swear. I'm not sure this is what he would have expected, but I totally agree with him on this piece that he wrote in the Kansas City Star, headlined, "After Masked White Nationalist March, Kansas City should consider anti-masking law." Now, this comes after we had these, losers from this group, Patriot Front, marching around Kansas City on Saturday through downtown. They're wearing their matching khakis, navy shirts, and white face masks, carrying combination of the American flag. Some were upside down. You had the Confederate flag mixed in there as well. It's not really clear what they were doing, but they marched around, they jumped in the back of U-Hauls, and they left town. So I don't know why anybody takes this group seriously, but they look like a bunch of people who need to find some hobbies, is what they look like to me. But whatever you want to define Patriot Front as, and I have no idea who's involved in this group, if there are strong local ties, don't know anything about them. But if you want to use this as a reason to have anti-masking laws in Kansas City, sign me up. Because guess what? When you look at a lot of the protests and the rallies that have taken place across Kansas City over the last several months, you are far more likely to have what I would consider left-wing causes that people are out protesting on behalf of with mask wearers. Now, these COVID or these Patriot Front guys are not wearing the COVID masks. They're wearing full-blown masks over their faces. They're not wearing the dopey little COVID masks.
Granny panties is what they're called.
Yes. Thank you, John. Knows a thing or two about those. But I'm looking at it and I'm saying, what about all the protests on behalf of Gaza that happen on the plaza where people are wearing their COVID masks? They're not afraid of COVID. They don't want you to know who they are, right? I mean, it was the same thing in the Summer of Love back in 2020, but it's still happening today. You go to many of these rallies and these protests on behalf of left-wing causes, and, I mean, half the place is wearing a COVID mask. It's not because they're sitting there afraid of COVID in 2025, although apparently there's some new strain that's now come to the U.S. I'll tell you about here in a couple of minutes. But it's because they want to hide their faces. So I'm all about it, whether it's for the wacko Patriot Front group, whoever they are, or it's for whatever left-wing cause find themselves protesting Elon Musk on the plaza, State Line Road, when there were those protests outside of the Tesla dealership there. Same exact thing. You had half the place wearing their COVID masks. Why? They're suddenly afraid of COVID outdoors in a strain that doesn't even exist right now?
At KU.
Yeah.
Right? On the lawn.
Yes. Thank you for that, Mark. You're right. Same thing at KU. So I don't think this is exactly what Toriano Porter at the Kansas City Star would actually want. Unless they would claim, well, those people are wearing COVID masks, so you can't tell them not to wear their COVID mask. They're trying to keep themselves safe. You don't know about their immune system. No. We're not going to play that game. If you want a no masking rule in Kansas City, I'm on board. You still see people commit crimes, and they cover their face with a COVID mask. They're putting their lives and their freedom on the line. I'm pretty sure they're not afraid of COVID in 2025. It's obvious what they're doing. So if Toriano Porter and the Kansas City Star want to start lobbying for anti-masking laws in Kansas City, sign me up. There are at least 18 states in Washington, D.C. that have enacted anti-masking laws. I'm on board with it. I think it's a good law to have. But you better properly apply it. You better tell your Wokedoke buddies that are going down to the plaza, next weekend for some type of whatever weird protest they've got on their plans. You better tell them, don't try to sell me on, I'm afraid of COVID. Take that mask off. Put your money where your mouth is. And if so, I will be totally on board because to me, the politics of this whole thing don't matter. Jim is out east. Go ahead, Jim. You're on KCMO, my man. Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. My question is whether or not this would apply to law enforcement, because the ICE officials really are the ones that's trying to keep them on to keep from having personal retaliations.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't thought about that angle there, Jim. That's a very good point. I can't imagine it would apply to law enforcement because for those folks, oftentimes it's about their personal safety and there's a reason that they're wearing those masks. So I don't think it would apply to law enforcement, but I suppose that conversation can be had if and when the city takes up an ordinance like this.
But that may be Kansas City Star's reason for writing this is to get that in there for that.
Oh, so they can then out cops and out FBI agents.
Correct.
I hadn't thought about it from that angle, Jim. I will say that's even maybe a little too sinister for me. I think the Star is thinking that many steps ahead, to be honest. And that's why I'm actually supporting them in this. I think they're just looking at this from the standpoint of, well, you know, we had this Patriot Front group marching around with their Confederate flags, and they shouldn't be allowed to do that, so let's unmask them, which I'm fine with, unmasking them. But you got to play it both ways then. It is far more likely that Kansas City will be dealing with masked protesters on issues the Kansas City Star agrees with. Like, I don't even know what the Patriot Front group was protesting. They just kind of marched around like they were lost and then got in a U-Haul and left. But it's far more likely the Star will be supportive of protests happening in Kansas City where a large percentage of the crowd will be masked in COVID masks. What then will the editorial board say? If they want to be consistent, they've got to say, hey, we want anti-masking laws for everybody. Not, oh, these folks are just protecting themselves from COVID. That's all we're doing. I say take the masks off, all of them. And that goes back to the summer of 2020. There's no doubt about it. Now, you've got this going on as well. I just mentioned COVID and COVID masks. A highly infectious new COVID strain from China that led to a massive spike in hospitalizations has spread to the United States, including New York City, according to the CDC. The new NB 1.81 variant, boy, this is like the LGBTQIA. We're running out of letters and numbers here. The new variant is NB 1.81. Was first detected in the U.S. in late March and early April among international travelers arriving at airports in California, Washington State, Virginia, and New York City. Additional cases reported in Ohio, Rhode Island, and Hawaii. The CDC has said there are too few cases in the U.S. to be properly tracked in the agency's variant estimates, but experts are warning that the virus's run in China shows it spreads more quickly than other dominant strains of the respiratory infection. Experts have been closely tracking the new variant after it became the dominant strain in China this year, with cases surging across all of Asia. Hong Kong authorities say COVID-19 cases have spiked to the worst levels in at least a year after officials announced a significant increase in emergency room visits and hospitalizations in the last month due to the variant. So here we go again. I don't know what the end game is here for this strain. Obviously, there have been a number of different strains since the original strain 5+ years ago at this point. But the timeline of all this, with obviously Trump back in office, Trump putting the screws to China, Trump trying to get a trade deal that is more beneficial to the United States, is eerily reminiscent to where we were in late 2019 into early 2020. When Trump had cut a favorable trade deal for the U.S. against China, was likely rolling towards a re-election, and we all know what happened from there.
Looks like his tariffs on bats coming out of the wet markets in China didn't work,
Yeah,
right?
I guess that one that one didn't quite hit.
That one.
Yeah. But we'll have to see where exactly this variant goes. We know there's always that spike this time of year. The question is, how serious is this strain? And what exactly, and who exactly does it impact?
There you go.
Coming up, the 6 at 6, top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour. We will get to on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Boy, if you're waking up this morning and you've got some type of water issue on your hands, you need a plumber, it can be overwhelming, right? You start freaking out. We've all been there. You're like, what do I do? Who do I call? Well, the name could not be easier. The Plumbing Pro. I need a professional. I need a plumber. The Plumbing Pro. How much easier do you want this thing to be here? Okay. They have been in business in Kansas City since 1978. And Steve still runs a locally owned and locally operated operation here in Kansas City. They have not sold out to the big guys. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they are truly a locally owned business in Kansas City. And they will help the entire region, whether it's homeowners or businesses all over the entire metro. And they'll do it with the best service at a reasonable cost. That's what's worked for them in Kansas City for going on 50 years. And when you talk to Steve, I mean, he'll tell you that any success that they've enjoyed along the way is really the result of how they treated their customers along the way. So when you need a plumber, you really need the Plumbing Pro. All right. That's theplumbingpro.com, theplumbingpro.com. Make sure you fit in the in the theplumbingpro.com. And you'll know that whether you're leaking, clogged, or dripping, and we've all been there, you can rely on theplumbingpro.com.
Stream Mundo in the Morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Rolling till 7 o'clock on KCMO. Good morning. It's actually dry out there for the first morning in like a week, it feels like. So here we go. It's that time. Let's do it.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on 95.7 KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Top of the list this morning is, of course, the special session that was called by Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe yesterday, as the lawmakers in Missouri will go back to work and go back to the state capitol next Monday for what they are dubbing a special session. And a big reason for that special session is trying to get state funding for the Chiefs and the Royals to keep these two teams in the state of Missouri. And Mike Kehoe saying in a press conference yesterday that it's imperative they keep these teams.
This is the same amount of revenue the state stands to lose if either team relocates to any other state. But local support is still critical in this effort, and this plan will require local contributions. So I'm asking legislators to work with us to keep these businesses in the state where they belong, the state of Missouri.
So Mike Kehoe is putting all his chips into the middle of the table here. He believes he has to get this done by the end of the month. That is when the Kansas Star Bond offer comes off the table. June 30th is when that happens. And basically, he does not want to call the bluff of the state of Kansas and or the Chiefs and the Royals. Kansas can extend the Star Bond offer to June of 2027. Kansas has said they won't do it. I would call Kansas's bluff because, frankly, Kansas has no reason to not extend the offer here one more year. Like, if Kansas takes the offer off the table, well, they've got no chance. Now they're at least in the game. So I would call the bluff of both the teams and the state of Kansas and see what happens here, because I still think Missouri has a very strong bargaining chip that they can play. But until you get some answers from the local level as to what the heck their plans are at the county level, why are we doing the state level first? That's a fair critique I've heard from Republicans down in Jeff City on this. But they're going back, and we'll see how it goes starting next week.
Number 2.
A ruling by the Missouri Supreme Court yesterday has effectively made abortion illegal in the state. The state's top court ruled yesterday that a Jackson County district judge applied the wrong standard in rulings back in December and February that allowed abortions to resume in the state for the first time since they were nearly completely halted under the overturning of Roe v. Wade. In a 2-page ruling, the court ordered Judge Jerry Zhang to vacate her earlier orders and reevaluate the case using the standards the court laid out. So now you've basically got Missouri once again in a position where abortions are not happening. Kansas City Star lead story this morning: Planned Parenthood cancels Kansas City abortions after Missouri Supreme Court ruling. So one side of our state line trying to do what it can to protect the unborn. And, of course, this is going to be a major topic in the state of Missouri going through next year when this is expected to be back on the ballot.
Number 3.
In the 6 at 6, this is just beyond bizarre. A Center School District security guard has been charged with murder after a shooting near Westport. Kansas City man and Center School District security guard has been charged with second-degree murder after this deadly shooting near Westport Road and Broadway Boulevard. Marquise Ponder also charged in Jackson County Circuit Court with unlawful use of a weapon and 2 counts of armed criminal action. Ponder was partially identified as the suspect because of the distinctive shirt he was wearing at the time of the crime, a shirt identifying him as a security guard for the Center School District. Okay, obviously he's innocent until proven guilty. But here's a little piece of advice for anybody looking to commit crimes. Don't wear merchandise from your employer when you go out there and start committing heinous acts of violence, whether it's petty theft or, God forbid, homicide. It's probably a bad idea to wear merchandise from your employer. I mean, man, what an absolute imbecile if, of course, he is ultimately guilty in this case. That is just beyond stupid.
Number 4.
We've been following this tragedy since 1 week ago tonight when Sarah Milgram, Johnson County, Kansas native, was shot in Washington, D.C., coming out of an event at a Jewish museum for no reason other than she was Jewish. Well, the Prairie Village native who was murdered last week was laid to rest yesterday. Family and friends gathered for the funeral of 26-year-old Sarah Milgram, who was shot and killed alongside her boyfriend, Yoron Lashinsky, outside of the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. She was a Shawnee Mission East graduate in 2017 and a University of Kansas graduate in 2021. Milgram's family will begin the traditional 7-day mourning period that is obviously popular in the Jewish faith, known as the sitting Shiva. So Lashinsky's funeral was held in Israel on Sunday. Court records allege that the shooter, Elias Rodriguez, said, as we played last week on the audio, "I did it for Palestine and I did it for Gaza."
Number 5.
In the 6 at 6, Jack in the Box closing all its stores around Kansas City. It was one that shut down by me, a few months ago, and I actually never went there. I was always like, who actually goes to Jack in the Box? I'd never seen anyone there. I don't know anyone who's ever been to a Jack in the Box. I hope I'm not learning something new about you two guys this morning. Oh, one hand went up.
I've been one time.
Okay.
I've been more than once.
Okay. All right. That's all I needed to know. That's enough. I don't need to know anymore. I'm going to look at you guys differently.
To your point, every time I went there, I just saw employees eating in there.
Yes. The company announced last month plans to close up to 200 underperforming stores as part of an aggressive financial plan called Jack on Track. So according to the Jack in the Box website, the only location listed for the Kansas City area is going to be a future location at 740 Northwest Shoal Creek Parkway, expected to open in August.
Number 6.
And last for the 6 at 6, today is the day that Southwest Airlines sadly begins to charge for its bags. $35 for the first bag, and then it will be $45 for the second bag. That begins today, May 28th. The new fees apply to all fares except for Business, Select, and Rapid Rewards A-List preferred agents. A sad, sad, sad state of affairs. Love Southwest. Hate this move. Coming up, there's your 6 at 6. NPR is totally missing the point on what is free speech. We'll explain next. Defund NPR, defund NPR, defund NPR. That's right. Good morning, 7:05. Glad you are starting off the morning with us on KCMO. How'd I do there on that chant?
That was all right. I was thinking of NPR, TIAQ plus, or something like that. Put some more initials in there.
I think I would need my COVID mask to properly do a chant on the plaza, too, or something like that with a big dumb sign in my hands. But you know what? For now, it'll do.
Great YouTube videos of people who just blend in with the crowd and start nattering away at the person next to them. Oh, funny stuff.
NPR is suing the Trump White House, along with 3 Colorado public radio stations who filed suit yesterday in federal court over Trump's executive order that, of course, bars the use of congressionally appropriated funds for NPR and PBS. So this broke like late in the show yesterday, but then we got more details on this lawsuit as the day went along. And this is such a pathetic excuse for trying to use the free speech angle in your favor. The lawsuit says the administration is basically abusing its power to direct how federal money will be spent and to pass laws. It names Trump, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, and others as the defendants. A team that includes noted free speech lawyer Theodore J. Boutros filed the lawsuit for NPR and the Colorado stations jointly in the District of Columbia. They called Trump's early May executive order textbook retaliation and an existential threat to the public radio system that millions of Americans across the country rely on for vital news and information. Okay, now I just gotta laugh.
And coffee mugs and tote bags.
Yeah. And pins and keychains.
And videos of the Moody Blues at Red Rocks.
Yeah, and a bunch of other crap nobody ever asked for. That's what NPR does. It is not the only place for vital news and information. Okay? You can get that here every single day on KCMO. It's why we're kicking their butts, because you actually trust us much more in the information and actually mild entertainment compared to some stiff who's just sitting there reading some script off a piece of paper who sounds like he's half in the grave. That's what NPR is. And I'm not saying it doesn't have the right to exist. It does have the right to exist. I mean, it's a total sham that they call themselves news. It's a completely biased operation, which I'm also okay with. I'm fine with bias. But you don't get to have federal dollars fund your bias when the bias is against half the country. Like, that's not what taxpayer dollars should be getting used for. I wouldn't ask for taxpayer dollars to fund KCMO. All we simply do is say, hey, support our great local and national sponsors here. That keeps us going. That keeps us growing. That's it. That's the name of the game. That's all we ask of you. But this is from NPR President and CEO Catherine Maher. She said in a statement yesterday, the executive order is a clear violation of the Constitution and the First Amendment's protections for freedom of speech and association and freedom of the press. You guys don't know. This is not about freedom of the press. The press is as free in America as it's ever been. This is simply about you not getting to tap in to the government coffers to fund your agenda. That is not a free speech issue. It reminds me, yesterday we were telling you about this student at KU who is suing the university because he talked to National Panhandler Radio here, KCUR, about some changes that KU is making to one of its residence halls that basically said if you were transgender or non-binary or whatever, you had to move to a different hall. They were shifting around where these individuals could stay, what halls they could be in. And this guy who was a resident assistant at KU, he went off on the university and they fired him as a resident assistant, as an RA. And they said, dude, you violated your employment agreement. You can't go talking to the media, trashing your boss. So he's suing KU. And part of the reason he's suing KU is because he claims they've infringed upon his free speech. Okay, free speech does not give you the right to trash your employer without your employer being allowed to fire you. I can't come on the air and trash my employer and then say, well, I got free speech. Yeah, I have free speech rights, and they have free speech to basically then fire me. NPR has all the free speech that it wants to have. The idea that they are somehow playing the victim here in getting defunded by this administration is not about free speech. It's about what is the government's role in funding any kind of media enterprise in this country. And the answer is it's been decades since we should have stopped funding PBS and NPR, but nobody had the cojones to do it. Finally, we got a guy who does. And they're acting like this is some kind of free speech violation. It is anything but that. And this is frankly more about NPR than it is PBS. I think PBS will be fine. PBS could raise all the money that it needs to in a heartbeat because a lot of what they do is obviously apolitical with the documentaries and things of that nature. NPR, I mean, if that thing just exploded tomorrow, nobody would bat an eye. And really nobody would miss them either. PBS is its own animal. They do a pretty good job on some things. And you know what? They'll get the funding that they need. Kansas City PBS does a nice job. But the NPR nonsense, I mean, that thing is just absolute hot garbage. But they're trying hard to portray themselves as the victims here. So this case has been assigned to U.S. District Court Judge Randolph D. Moss. Do all judges put their middle initial in their names? Is that like a requirement prerequisite to being a
Randy
judge?
Moss?
Yeah. He's picked a new career, apparently. So Randolph D. Moss, who is also handling a case involving a related lawsuit filed by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CBP, or CPB, against the President of the United States. So conveniently, they always file these lawsuits in oftentimes deep blue districts where they can find judges who will be like-minded to what they're trying to achieve. Whether or not it works remains to be seen. But it's also why Congress has to continue to do and hold up its end of the bargain. This stuff can't all be done through executive orders. You've got to have Congress step up. And this would be, I would imagine, universally supported by many Republicans in the Senate and the House. Frankly, I don't know which Senate member or House member would be against the idea of defunding NPR and PBS. I mean, if they're out there, please, I would like them to stand up and try to explain why they would be against this kind of defunding. This should pass in a heartbeat. So there are things that I understand why Trump wants to do a lot of this stuff on executive order, but there are some things that should just be no-brainers through Congress that have to be part of whether it's the big, beautiful bill or future bills and take it out of the court's hands because they're filing these cases in districts that are going to be friendly to their causes, and that just ends up kicking the can down the road, and it becomes much more of a headache for the administration as they're trying to juggle all these balls at the same time. And we don't need any more of that. Leave the juggling of balls to NPR. They seem to do that pretty well. 913-408-7957, 713 on a Tuesday. No, it's a Wednesday. It feels like a Tuesday, but it's a Wednesday on KCMO. I only made that mistake once so far this week. I didn't call yesterday, Monday, but I did just call today, Tuesday. Cody Johnson tickets. He's playing at Thunder Ridge Nature Arena down in the Ozarks. We've got those coming up at 8:45 this morning, 90 minutes away. He puts on a great show, and we will be giving those away all week long here on KCMO Talk Radio at 8:45. Do not miss that. Cindy O'Loughlin is coming up at the bottom of the hour. She is the Senate president in Missouri as they get set for a special session that is going to be happening on Monday as they try to get state funding for the Chiefs and the Royals through the legislature in Jeff City during this special session. She will give us the insight on how exactly this could play out in the Missouri State Senate coming up in 15 minutes on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and streaming as always on the KCMO Talk Radio app. There is a new conspiracy theory about the president's war with Harvard. We'll tell you what that is and how ludicrous it is coming up next.
Call Mundo 913-408-7957. Now on 95.7 FM.
I believe it's today, might be tomorrow. Bill O'Reilly is in China and is doing a seminar on President Trump with the Chi-Coms. Not Xi specifically, but all of Xi's guys are going to be there in attendance. They all want to know more and learn more about Trump. And Bill O'Reilly is over there. He's overseas right now. He was taking his son over there as a college graduation gift. They went to Japan. They are now in China. Bill is doing this event, seminar, whatever you want to call it, on Trump. And then they're going to South Korea. So when Bill is back in the States, we will get him on KCMO to talk about that trip. And especially this presentation that he's given today. It might be tomorrow, but I believe it's today, Wednesday, to a lot of the influential people around President Xi. And I know that Bill is hoping that he can release that and share that with the public, but that's going to be up to the Chi-Coms. Like, you don't just tell them what you're doing. It's a surveillance state. He can't even bring his cell phone into China. He's got a burner phone in China while he's there. And then he's got to get his own personal phone back as he gets set to leave the country. So Trump knows he's there. The president of the United States signed off on him doing this. And it has not been widely reported, but I do know he's there right now. He's giving this seminar on Trump today. And hopefully he ends up going to South Korea, gets there in one piece. All he's getting out of the Chi-Coms is a free dinner for him and his son. So his kid better eat a lot of food to make this worth his time. And then he's off to South Korea and then back to the States, I believe, early next week. So we'll get him on the show soon to talk about that trip and everything else happening in the world. In the meantime, speaking of Trump, this comes down courtesy of Fox News. And they had a story here. Melania Trump has shot down a conspiracy theory on why Trump is going after Harvard. So this started circulating online that the reason that Trump is going after Harvard is why? Because their son Barron was not accepted to the school. That has been the online rumor that has been floating out there. Well, they should just take the course that Mark took, and then Barron can be a Harvard certificate owner like our guy Mark is here on the show.
That's right. It's pretty easy. It's cheap.
Took you 2
done.
hours, right?
Exactly.
You can pay $200 after you ace your exam.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be, I guess you're not a Harvard graduate, but you are a Harvard certificate holder.
Print it out, put it on the fridge.
Yeah. Make Melania proud.
Yeah.
And make Donald proud. That's right.
Yes, man.
That's right. Make him very proud with the Harvard certificate on the fridge. But a spokesperson for First Lady Melania Trump shut down the completely false theory that her husband is warring with Harvard because her son Barron was supposedly not accepted to the school. The Palm Beach Post first reported that the First Lady spokesperson said in a statement here, Barron did not apply to Harvard, and any assertion that he or that anyone on his behalf applied is completely false. So I'm not big on like responding to every rumor that is out there on the internet, but this one is worth it. This one you want to nip in the bud. Because you know and I know that if Harvard had the application of Barron Trump right now, they would release it. They would say they're lying and here's the proof. Here's the kid's application. He applied. We didn't let him in. That's why they're warring with us. They would have released that right after the statement from Melania Trump. They didn't do that. So why? Because, well, they're telling the truth. The Trumps are telling the truth here. He probably didn't apply. But this one you nip in the bud because, first off, Trump's war with Harvard is so clearly larger than even just Harvard. It's about how our higher education institutions operate and what they actually do for the good of the American people, which is becoming fuzzier every single day. They have massive numbers of foreign students coming in. And the rub here on all this with the foreign students is that most of them come from very wealthy families who are paying full freight. And they're paying full freight, which then allows these universities to subsidize a lot of the Americans who come to their colleges and can't afford the $80, $90, $100,000 in tuition, room, and board for some of these elite institutions. So they're taking basically rich foreign money, people who oftentimes don't really possess and want to have American values, to basically make the money they need to make to then subsidize the enrollments of Americans. And then, of course, they're biased in doing that. We know about Harvard and what the Supreme Court said about how Harvard is treating, in particular, Asian students and how they were biased against them because of their race in favor of other races. So these higher institutions are just an absolute utter mess. And the more that this administration can expose the operations inside of the Harvards of the world, the more eye-opening it's going to be for the American people. So keep signing me up for more of that. And no, Barron Trump did not apply to Harvard. Cindy O'Loughlin, Senate President in Missouri, will be here on their special session for the Chiefs and the Royals starting on Monday next.
Hey, it's Kevin Kietzman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Missouri Senate President Cindy O'Loughlin is here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We are streaming, as always, on that KCMO Talk Radio app, and we now have a special session coming to Jefferson City, and a big part of the special session, of course, is going to be driven by potentially state funds for the Chiefs and the Royals. Senator, good morning. Thanks for KCMO Talk Radio. We appreciate your time. Your immediate reaction to the governor's announcement yesterday on this special session that you guys are heading back for next week.
Well, basically what's being discussed is allowing the Chiefs and Royals to invest in the Kansas City area to expand their operations. And to pay back that investment, they would be allowed to keep some of the taxes that they themselves generate. So, in my mind, it's not only a win for Kansas City, it's a win for the state.
So when it comes to how this bond deal is going to be done, is it just money from the stadiums and anything they build around it that then would go back to pay off a percentage of the bonds that are out there? Or is it more like this Kansas Star Bond District where you guys draw this arbitrary map and any of these sales tax dollars above the current levels and thresholds will go back to the teams? How is this set up?
So it's taxes that are generated by the teams themselves and can include their sales tax, their withholding tax, and what is called their athletes and entertainers tax. So basically, it's taxes that they themselves are generating by being in business. And, they generate quite a bit of revenue. And if they are to improve their stadiums, it just brings additional people into the state.
How do you feel like the Missouri Senate in particular is reacting to this news that now you're all going to be going back to Jeff City? And this issue is somewhat controversial. So what's been the response to this in your caucus?
I think in general, the caucus is supportive of it. There will be people who will hear from some of the constituents in their district with questions. There will be, of course, in the Senate, a lot of conversation, as we call it, about it. One of the interesting things that I did was put a post out on social media explaining in general what was being suggested, asking people to give me their feedback. And I've gotten so far about 250 responses, the vast majority of which were positive. Out of 250, I've probably gotten 6 or 7 that were negative. So I think people understand that the Chiefs and Royals bring a lot to the state of Missouri, and that this proposal would be a win for the state.
How much frustration is there, though, that the state is now being asked to go first in this process, saying, hey, Jackson County, maybe Clay County, you do your part, and we'll help you on the back end? How much frustration is there on the order of this thing playing out?
Well, there are a lot of different personalities in the Senate. And sometimes issues like this can be used for political gain. So, of course, there will be people who will have reservations, and we'll have to talk through those. But at the end of the day, as they say, I think the numbers can tell you that this really is a win for our state. And just as an example, I would bring up the opportunity that Missouri had to sponsor the Speedway. And I think the investment that was being asked at that time was about $48 million. And the state decided not to do that. And right now, at the Legends, yearly, their annual income from all of the sales and activities they have adds up to about $600 million. So, of course, every proposal has to be looked at carefully. There has to be protections for the people of the state and safeguards put in place. But investment in areas brings additional business, which brings additional jobs. So those kinds of things are very important.
Now, that $600 million number for the Speedway, that's top line revenue, right? That's not sales tax
Correct.
revenue?
No, correct. That's top line revenue.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, what about the other part of this that you're going to the special session for, and that is this infrastructure funding? It's about $500 million. It's dubbed and called House Bill 19. You have passed that in the Senate. It did not get through the House by the end of the legislative session. Do you think that any funding for the Chiefs and the Royals is contingent on House Bill 19 also now passing on the House side during this special session next week?
Well, I mean, the governor's call has three different parts to it. And the initial capital improvements bill, as you stated, did not get through the House. I think that what the governor has suggested doing is concentrating on a few of the most important things, one of which was funding for cancer treatment at the University of Missouri. So there are three different parts to the call that he has issued. There's also additional assistance for people. We've had quite a bit of storm damage in the state. So I'm expecting all three parts of the call to get through the Senate. And then, of course, it would have to go back to the House.
Andy O'Loughlin is here on KCMO, Missouri Senate President on 95.7 FM. So, Senator, how much of this was motivated by the upcoming June 30th deadline that the state of Kansas has in its star bonds that they have said as of now they're not willing to extend?
Well, I think that we, of course, have to be cognizant of the fact that there is a deadline. I know that both of the teams also, have been discussing that with Kansas. And so it does have a bearing on bringing this topic up now. But whether it was now or later, it's basically a business transaction, and we have to decide if we're willing to be partners with two, what I would consider world-class teams.
Mm-hmm. Where's your gut at right now on whether or not you think ultimately you can get the Chiefs Royals funding done starting next week?
I think that we can get it done. I think that there will be a lot of conversation about what this actually means to the state. And I think once people look at the numbers and maybe set aside a little bit of the politics of it, they will understand that this investment actually by the teams in their own advancement and ability to offer additional things to the state is a net positive for the citizens.
Mm-hmm. Well, Senator, we appreciate you being here. We'd love to keep in touch as that special session gets going next week down there in Jeff City, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks so much. That is Cindy O'Loughlin. She is the Senate President in Missouri as they get set for that special session next week. So Missouri blinked here. They are playing by this, what I believe to be a made-up June 30th deadline. The state of Kansas has said it will not extend the star bond offer. They can do that for one more year if they want to. It doesn't require the legislature coming back together. It's just basically leadership in the House and the Senate can basically snap their fingers and say, you know what, we'll extend the star bond offer one more year to June of 2027 or June of 2026, excuse me. And the teams are saying, hey, our deadline's end of June. And I say this with all due respect to the teams, more so the Royals. No one has any blanket idea what the Royals want to do. And suddenly they've got a deadline? How can they have a deadline? The Royals have blown through every single one of their own deadlines for going on 2.5 years now. And suddenly they've got a deadline of June 30th? A deadline if it smacked them in the face based on how they've handled this process. So, listen, I understand why Mike Kehoe is doing this. He doesn't want to be the governor that oversees the loss of one or both of these teams. But a part of me does want to say, call their bluff. These teams want to stay in Missouri. The star bond offer has been on the table for a year. If it was everything it's been hyped up to be, they would have bolted day one. They haven't. Why is that? Yeah, I know they want to see what they can get out of Missouri. I get it. But where do you think their hearts are at right now, considering how poorly this thing has been managed on the Missouri side of the state line? Jackson County's a mess. For whatever reason, it seems like the Royals just really don't want to be in Clay County. That's just my read on the situation. Clay County would love to explore this further, but for whatever reason, they're dead set on downtown Kansas City, Missouri, and Jackson County. I mean, the Chiefs, obviously, I really believe, just based on how they've acted throughout the process, want to stay where they're at, but they like having some leverage. Kansas gives them some leverage. And do you really think that Kansas is magically going to go out there now and say, yeah, our June 30th deadline comes and goes, and we're not extending it one more year? If we get to the end of June and the teams ask Kansas to extend the Star Bond deal for one more year, they will do it, no questions asked. Why wouldn't they? They're in the hunt. They're in the conversation right now. If they stick by this June 30th deadline, it's over for them. They have no chance. They have nothing to lose by extending their own deadline. They're saying right now they won't extend their deadline because they want an answer as well. But if we're sitting here on June 29th and the teams say, hey, can you extend that Star Bond deal 12 months? They'll do it easily. It will not be controversial at all. So Missouri blinked first here. And this is basically a high-stakes game of poker. And who's going to call whose bluff? Missouri had a chance to call the bluff of the teams and potentially the state of Kansas, and they did not do it. They are moving ahead with this special session. And I can tell you, there are people in the Missouri Senate that are not thrilled about this, that they're going back down to Jeff City after being there for the last bunch of months and having to go through this whole rigmarole once again. They are not thrilled with that prospect, but they got to do it. The governor called them back. 913-408-7957. And I just can't help but think there is some pressure as well there in this entire process. 913-408-7957. As we take you through the morning, Ty Masterson, Kansas Senate president, we'll get his take on that side of the line coming up at 9 o'clock. So do not miss that conversation. Our buddy Patrick Toohey will be here as well. Coming up, a great win for the MAHA movement yesterday when it comes to the future of the COVID shot for certain groups of people. RFK announced it. We have the audio next. Well, you've got one more day to sign up. Tomorrow morning, if you are a small or medium-sized business in Kansas City, and you want to figure out how to get AI to be a bigger part of what you're doing because it's here, your competitors are using it, and you may say, I don't know what to do. Barely keeping my business afloat, or even if you're doing great, doesn't really matter. You want to use artificial intelligence right now because it's here and it's not going anywhere. And at Centric, right off of State Line Road, where they have been training the technology workforce for Kansas City for 2 decades, they have a free seminar tomorrow morning called the AI and Automation for Business live demonstration that you can take advantage of and RSVP to now. You go to centric.com/AI. That's CENTRIQ.com/AI. And you go there, you click on the link. It's obvious. You RSVP for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and just join them. I mean, it's just an entryway into learning about AI, learning about your options for small and medium businesses, and knowing as well that if you want to go down that road, you don't have to break the bank. But there's no commitment. Tomorrow is just a learning experience. But there are still a few spots left to sign up. Go to centric.com, CENTRIQ.com/AI.
It's Mundo in the Morning. Now on FM at 95.7. Set a preset on your radio. KCMO Talk Radio.
I can't get enough of the winning. I really can't. I mean, think about where we've been the last few years on this issue. And then this announcement that came down yesterday from RFK Jr. Here we go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty McCary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
There's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children.
We're now one step closer to realizing President Trump's promise to make America healthy again.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
That rolled out yesterday from Bobby Kennedy and the HHS. There was a key word in there that I don't want to overlook, and it was the word today. As of today, we do not recommend, and the CDC will no longer recommend, COVID shots for healthy kids and healthy pregnant women. The other word, of course, is healthy. Every person is different. Every person's health needs are different. But if you are a healthy child or a healthy pregnant woman, the CDC is taking that off of recommended vaccinations. Now, of course, there's going to be a bunch of, blue-haired parents that are probably going to double dose their kids with COVID shots now just to stick it to RFK, because that's how screwed up some people are. But the word today stood out to me because what we lost over the last few years when talking about COVID and anything science-related is that science is settled. Science is never settled. What's his name? Fauci would use that word all the time. Oh, it's settled science. Well, technically it's not, especially when you were talking about a COVID deal that no one knew anything about, that we were learning more about every single day and every single week, right? There was no settled. Settled science is technically an oxymoron because you're always learning more about science, and that changes what your approach should be and what your interpretation of the science should be when you learn more. So they're saying, hey, as of today, we do not believe that healthy children and healthy pregnant women need to be getting the COVID shot. But they gave themselves an out because, there's this new strain apparently that's out there. And I'm not, trust me, going to go nuts over any of that. But once again, it could change if, God forbid, there were a strain that was maybe much more impactful against children than any of the strains have been thus far. It is possible that the CDC could change that recommendation. That's why they gave themselves that out by using the word today. But that's all that matters. In science, all that matters is today, because tomorrow can bring new science and new results that would change what those recommendations should be. And I just appreciate that approach by the people in charge. If nothing else, that approach there is reason enough to say, boy, do I trust these people a hell of a lot more than the last people. Do you remember this from early in Joe Biden's tenure when he was basically shaming us and yelling at us to get the COVID shot and saying his patience was wearing thin?
My message to unvaccinated Americans is this: what more is there to wait for? What more do you need to see? We've made vaccinations free, safe, and convenient. The vaccine has FDA approval. Over 200 million Americans have gotten at least one shot. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
Pound sand, old man. I just didn't want you to hit the dump button there, Mark. That's why I kept it relatively polite. All right.
Come on, man.
Remember that approach? What are you waiting for? My patience is wearing thin, said the former president back in September of 2021 when he was trying to shame you, and his administration was trying to make it so that private sector employers were basically demanding you get this thing that did nothing to prevent you from actually getting it and spreading it? Remember that world? Why do you think it is that while Trump has not had a perfect presidency in his first 130 days, why do you think it is that his approval rating is hanging on pretty darn well? Because people remember nonsense like this. That's why.
I'm getting pissed now.
No, I'm not. I'm really not. I'm just not wanting to forget where we were just a few short years ago. That's all. News in 2 minutes. We're back with you after the news on the president mentioning Canada for 51st statehood next. I don't know about you. I want no part of Canada. I don't. Yes, I understand there might be some foreign policy benefits when it comes to more energy production and things of that nature that may be beneficial to the United States by having more landmass. But I don't know if Trump's trolling on this whole deal or if he's serious on this Canada 51st state thing. But he brought it up again yesterday, and I just can't buy in on it. I can't. So the president writing yesterday on his Truth Social, late in the afternoon, I told Canada, which very much wants to be a part of our fabulous Golden Dome system, that it will cost $61 billion if they remain a separate but unequal nation, but will cost $0 if they become our cherished 51st state. And then he ends his Truth Social post saying, they are considering the offer. Count me out. I don't want any
I'm
part
not
of
worth
it.
your Red Lobster money?
No. Canada's not worth
He'd have
the Red
dropped
Lobster
this
money.
long ago if they hadn't if it hadn't gotten them all at what's the word, uproar, had gotten them all upset. I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, well,
he would have dropped it.
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, they had King Charles. Charlie got off the throne and came over to give the address to the government the other day, and that rarely happens.
That was a bad look. I would agree.
Yeah, they're triggered.
They definitely are triggered by it. But I'm sitting here and I'm like, what's the benefit to any of this? We already do a lot of CYA for Canada. Let's be honest. They would have been taken over by somebody long ago if we were not sitting here as their next door neighbors. They couldn't defend themselves if they tried. But I'm also like, so we're going to entice them to be this 51st state with this Golden Dome. Now, we don't even have a real plan for the Golden Dome yet. The Golden Dome is this multi-layered defense system that would basically protect us from, God forbid, nuclear war breaking out. It would be able to intercept missiles if they are launched from other sides of the world, even if they are launched from space. The concept includes both ground and space-based capabilities that would defend against missiles by detecting and destroying them ahead of launch, intercepting them early in flight, halting them mid-course, and stopping them in the last few moments of approaching a target. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. What's it cost? Well, the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, has estimated a cost of $542 billion for the space-based components alone. I don't want to help out Canada. I'm not saying this is a bad idea. Just got to figure out how to pay for it. But I'm not bailing out Canada and then welcoming them in as a 51st state to protect them from, God forbid, nuclear war. I'm not looking to be in that business here, John.
We should have put in Reagan's Star Wars defense.
That would have
been
worked.
already done by now.
Maybe it would have. So aerospace and defense company Lockheed Martin says on X they will support the mission. Yeah, because they'll make a freaking fortune on it. That's why. $500 billion to get this thing going. No wonder Lockheed Martin's on board. And then the political side of this can't be overlooked either. So Canada's got 40 million people in it. If they become a 51st state, they get 2 U.S. senators, right? What happens there? They're definitely going to be of a blue variety. They will also get members of the House of Representatives. California has about 40 million people in it, same population as Canada. That would be about 50 members in the House of Representatives. The Republicans will never see a majority in the House if Canada were to become a 51st state. So what are we doing here? Now, yeah, is it a troll job by Trump? Probably, in part.
Classic.
All-time troll job. And I can appreciate that. But I'm also, and I love trolling. I'll troll anybody, especially Canada. I love trolling the French as well. They're at the top of the list, too, especially after Macron's getting slapped around by his wife on, the global stage the other day. The only person that slaps Macron around more than his wife is apparently Donald Trump. So, I'm all about that. But I'm also like, please, if there's like 2% of Trump that's serious, that's 2% too much on this deal.
Well, it's like when you're out on the golf course, that's where some deals start. Hey, you wouldn't want to be a state, would you? Oh, come on. You know what I mean? It just starts as idle chatter before it develops. So it just seems like that kind of thing. Like, oh, you're interested? He throws it out there. It's a balloon. All right. And if he gets interest, then he jumps on it.
Well, social media, I think you're right about that too. And social media can't really tell, and no one seems to be able to tell whether or not this is legit or not, which I think makes it all the more compelling.
Yeah.
And it gives us, of course, some good fodder here on the show, and I'm down to talk about it and have the conversation with you at 913-408-7957. I can't get myself to support it. On the text line, Pete, this whole idea would cost a fortune anyway, referring to the Golden Dome. Israel's Iron Dome has also cost them hundreds of billions of dollars, and America is almost 500 times the size of Israel. Also on the text line, Alberta would be a great addition. Any others, not so much. That is the most conservative part of Canada.
Your favorite province.
Yeah. Can we do that, though? Can we just pick and choose?
We'll just leave Quebec.
Leave Montreal. You know, Montreal maybe can be part of like Vermont or something. Let them join the Bernie Bros up there. But I would agree, if we're going to go anywhere in Canada, go to West. Try to connect Alaska down to the lower 48.
There we go.
So you kind of have this natural progression.
Corridor there.
Yes, the we'll call it whatever, the Canadian corridor that we take over.
The pipeline, if you will.
That is where, I think that's where our buddy Kelly Urich moved up to from down the hall at 94.9 KCMO Classic Hits. He's up there in Western Canada, and he swears to me he won't come on the show because he's trying to get his Canadian citizenship. So he doesn't want to come on and bash the government.
That's how free the speech is.
Yeah, exactly. All you Americans who are like, I'm losing my free speech, I'm going to Canada. So he tells me that being up there in Western Canada, they are very conservative. And actually, the younger you are, the more conservative you are, because they're realizing that this liberal Democrat system has failed that country tremendously, and the young people are waking up to it. So he's like, up here, we got a lot of people that love Trump. They love MAGA. They love all this stuff. But you go to the rest of Canada, you go to Quebec, you go to Montreal, and it's TDS all day, every day. So that's the problem.
You can imagine the blue and red corridors in America. They don't just stop at the border and change colors, really. So, the middle part of the country, too, is very conservative.
Yes, absolutely. It's just like, it's in many ways just like here, where you have the population centers.
Yeah, and you go to Toronto and Ontario, around Buffalo, get into Windsor and Detroit, they're pretty blue.
Yes, deep blue. And that's, of course, where a lot of your population centers are. But you know what? If the western part wants to get on board, I could go along with it. I could. More so than taking on the whole country. I'll largely pass on that at 8:12 on a Wednesday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. We're giving away Cody Johnson tickets coming up in a half hour. He is going to be down in the Ozarks at the Thunder Ridge Nature Arena coming up in August. So we got your next chance to win in 30 minutes here on KCMO. Patrick Toohey from the Show Me Institute is going to react to the special session that starts on Monday in Jefferson City around the Chiefs and the Royals. So we've got a busy hour ahead on 95.7 FM. We're always streaming, of course, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. 913-408-7957. Did you see the surprising economic data point that came out yesterday? I couldn't believe this thing didn't get the headlines that it should have gotten. And we will share it with you coming up on KCMO. In the meantime, we are off of Memorial Day weekend, which means what? What's picking up? What's back in the forefront? Graduations. Now, I could do a whole rant on how there are like kindergarten graduations and graduations for way too many levels right now. Thankfully, my oldest didn't have a kindergarten graduation. I might have boycotted that. We need a graduation for middle school, high school, and college. That's it. You could even talk me out of the middle school graduation. But either way, one of the deals now is you've got so many graduations, let's be honest, you got to come up with a gift. And I wouldn't be the guy to say, get the diamond gift for kindergarten graduation. I would never do that. But if it's a real graduation, like a high school graduation or a college graduation, well, you will get the best value on a potentially diamond graduation gift at Diamonds Direct here in Kansas City. They are at 119th and Row, and Angie and her team will do an incredible job taking care of you, as they have for me many years on this front. So whether your grad is looking to lean minimalist or bold, classic, trendy, whatever it might be, you have and they have gifts that fit every single budget, from under $500 to a once-in-a-lifetime investment. And you will get the white glove service over at Diamonds Direct that you would get at any jewelry store in Kansas City. I think you'll get better white glove service based on my experience. So head on in, tell Angie, Tom, and the team that we sent you on KCMO. I got a nice Facebook note from a listener who said he recently was in Diamonds Direct and he loved his experience. So head on over to 119th and Row or start shopping right now online at diamondsdirect.com, where you will get direct sourcing pricing, no middlemen, straightforward prices, and you get the 110% lifetime upgrade guarantee. So when you're ready to upgrade your diamond, you get 110% of your original purchase price towards your new selection, a signature perk that sets them apart over at Diamonds Direct.
If it's happening in KCMO, it's on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's Pete Mundo.
I can't believe how much this economic data point was overlooked yesterday when it came out. And here it is from CNBC.
Yes, and there are some surprises here. This is our May read on consumer confidence from the Conference Board. On the headline number, we're expecting a number somewhere north of 87. Comes in strong, 98.0. That is the best number since February of this year.
That consumer confidence number is up 12 points in May, the first month-to-month increase since 2024, according to the Consumer Confidence Index. It came in at a 98.0. The expectations were for an 87.1, and the last number was an 85.7. So what you're seeing now is consumers become more confident in a way that a lot of people on Wall Street did not expect. Now, why would that happen? Well, of course, tariff anxiety was part of the equation here. That obviously drove people to be a little less confident in recent months. And also, just as important, I think, is a disconnect between Main Street and Wall Street. You've got Main Street that for the last few years has not been part of this Wall Street surge that has happened where you have seen the markets go bonkers. And Trump came into office and said, we're kind of going to reset this thing here. We're going to focus on Main Street first. We're not going to focus on Wall Street first. And that's why some of these consumer confidence numbers and other economic data points that are being reported are not getting the attention that, frankly, they should be.
Well, the confidence numbers didn't reflect the reality, so to speak. People's confidence was low, and they like to report on that. But the economy was doing okay, if you will. So now that we're talking about the feelings, and the feelings are good, I don't think they want to emphasize that at all now. They just like to emphasize it when the confidence is down.
They wanted no part of this yesterday when it came out. CNBC did a good job reporting on it. But even the Associated Press, U.S. consumers' confidence rebounds after 5 straight months of declines. So even they hedge it in the headline. Instead of saying, wow, these numbers far exceeded expectations. April had a very poor consumer confidence number. It was the lowest since May of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. But it jumped up 12 points. So they now want to look at it and say, well, you know, this is just one bump up after a really bad stretch and a bit of a tumultuous stretch. Okay, fine. But now people are feeling better, and it jumped up tremendously. So the AP writes here, Americans' views of the economy improved in May after 5 straight months of declines, sent consumer confidence to its lowest levels since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, largely driven by anxiety over tariffs. A measure of Americans' short-term expectations for their income, business conditions, and the job market jumped 17.5 points. The proportion of consumers surveyed say that they think a U.S. recession could be coming in the next 12 months, but that number declined tremendously from April. So the other part of this, too, is that there are reports that businesses may not be buying the U.S. consumer confidence jump. Well, that's because they're too ingrained in the day-to-day headlines and day-to-day chaos. And while, yes, I think many Americans are interested in the news cycle, they are not ebbing and flowing like Wall Street is in, oh my gosh, a new tariff is coming. Oh my gosh, the EU is getting hit with 50% tariffs. Oh no, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? It's like, take it one day at a time. Take a deep breath. And also, Trump has been notoriously reactionary to the markets in a way that he doesn't get credit for. There is a new acronym that is out there. Some of you may not like this acronym, but it was dubbed yesterday Taco Tuesday. The acronym is TACO. What does TACO stand for? It stands for Trump Always Chickens Out. That is the acronym that some people are giving Donald Trump on Wall Street. And that is what they are attributing yesterday's 800-point rally in the Dow Jones to, this acronym. that was first deployed by a Financial Times columnist, used to describe a trend where Trump announces big tariffs on goods from other countries and then postpones them or cuts them hours or days later after a sharp market sell-off. I'm not saying it's a fair acronym, but I'm saying it's an acronym that is now getting some run in certain public.
Trump always chickens out, said the kid who flinches at the sight of their own shadow. Right? Wall Street's the one reacting and go, hey, you're the chicken.
Yes, they are. You're right about that. They have been the most overreactionary in all of this and not reading into what Trump is trying to accomplish while also understanding that, yes, Trump is not looking to create immense amount of pain in the U.S. economy. I think what he's trying to do here is stay unpredictable. He's trying to stay unpredictable in terms of how he is negotiating these trade deals. When he came out last Friday and said EU's getting hit with 50% tariffs, I rolled my eyes, not because I don't agree with what he's trying to do, but I also expected at some point for him to say, hey, we've suddenly made some progress in our negotiations. The EU is willing to talk. They're willing to move the ball forward a little bit faster on these negotiations, so I'm going to delay the tariffs. Like, we're starting to learn how the playbook is getting called here. And that a lot of these are getting used to kind of force the hand on these countries, because I think what he ultimately wants here as soon as possible is for all these trade deals to be done and over with. He doesn't want them to drag on. He's a business guy. He's not a politician. He's not trying to sit there and say, well, let me make sure I get my economic team on this and make sure that they investigate every single angle of this tariff deal. It's simply about getting the deals done and moving on to the next thing and making sure that America hopefully comes out on top on these deals. And he felt like the EU was dragging its feet, so he said, you know what, 50% tariff coming your way. And then a few days later, we're going to delay those tariffs because suddenly the EU is looking to come to the table. So that's the name of the game, and that's exactly what's going on here.
Some people like to cook with gas, nice even temperature. Trump uses the open flame. He likes to turn it up a little bit, turn it down.
And that is working out, I think, pretty well for him over these first few months. As much as I know it's a little chaotic and maybe too chaotic for some of you, there is a method to the madness. Patrick Tuohy has a method to his madness. He will be here on the Chiefs and Royals special session next.
Definitely in the car. In the car. and my phone, anywhere.
KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7, Kansas City's place to talk.
Hey, it's Kevin Kietzman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
So now we've got a special session starting in Missouri on Monday, and that will be in part highlighted by the Chiefs and the Royals. Can they get the state funding done for these two teams to entice them to stay on the Missouri side of the state line? Patrick Toohey is with the Show Me Institute, and he's on KCMO. He was on local TV. I saw a couple of clips of you last night. And you know what they called you, Patrick? They said, Budget Hawk, Patrick Toohey.
Yeah, sometimes they'll ask me, and I never know tax skeptic or, what fits on a chyron, what's short.
Think tank guy, think tank bro.
And maybe sometimes you got to explain to people what a think tank is. I mean, I don't envy their task of taking complicated issues and fitting it into a 1.5-minute segment.
That's why we've got a good solid 8 to 10 minutes with you here on KCMO.
That's right, a deep dive.
So we knew that this special session was going to come and get called by Governor Kehoe. But do you think that Missouri is basically blinking in this high-stakes poker game?
Well, I don't know what you mean by blinking, but I have heard, and again, I would never try to predict what the Missouri legislature does because they've disappointed me for 20 years now. But I am hearing that it's an uphill climb to pass this, that, kind of conservatives, moderates, left of center folks aren't eager to pass this. Now, I know it got reported out of the House quickly in half a day, but I think the Senate is not going to be an easy sell for these subsidies.
Well, blinking first, is Kehoe doing something that is not necessary by calling this special session? Is he basically taking the bait where the teams say, June 30th is our deadline, Star
absolutely.
Bond offer is June 30th?
Yes. No, I think this move is debasing the people of Missouri, just like Kansas did. I think it is embarrassing to have an entire state legislature kind of scrape and grovel before an entertainment franchise to keep them. I don't like the look of it. I think Missouri and Kansas, frankly, should say, look, we are great places for you to invest. For Missouri, you can say you guys have already made lots of money for decades. This is a good market. Stay here, but we're not going to again, grovel. And that's what this is. It's just so unseemly.
There also seems to me to be a potential downside here where if it doesn't pass, and you're right, I'm hearing a lot of things from Jeff City where there are Republicans who are not going to be happy with this. Some Democrats are not going to go on board because they're still ticked off at Republicans over abortion issues. They don't want to play ball. So I think it'll look even worse if this doesn't get done during a special session than had they just said last week, hey, 2 weeks ago, didn't get done. We'll try again next year. Hopefully Jackson County and Clay County can get their act together. And then hopefully we can maybe be the final piece of the puzzle. I just think this has the potential to be a real black eye and look a lot worse for the Missouri legislature than it would have had they tried to do this during the normal session. What about you?
Well, I think the reason why they didn't want to do it in the normal session is they didn't want to have hearings. They don't want a long, drawn-out want to listen to me up there running my mouth about how this is a bad idea. And so they tried to jam it in the last few days. It didn't go anywhere. So now they're going to have a special session, and now they've got to have that discussion. I don't know that it would be a black eye for the legislature necessarily, but certainly for Kehoe himself, who's going out of his way to call a special session for something. I don't know how often a special session fails to produce the thing that the governor called them into special session to do. So, he's got a lot of political capital on this. He'll be twisting a lot of arms, but no one's going to be surprised to learn what I think. I think this is a bad idea. I hope the legislature stands its ground, but, we'll find out in a few weeks' time.
You're right, though. I mean, you've got a runway here as a new governor. Anyone who's newly elected to office, same thing with the president. You've got a runway. You've got this honeymoon phase.
Right.
And a lot of that political capital is going on this issue. And for a guy that is probably going to be there for 8 years, he's putting a lot into this specific thing, which makes me wonder, does he know something that maybe we don't know about these teams' motivations?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't know anything. You listen to the type of things that he says. He's making the same tired arguments that we hear in Kansas City for years now, and that every market that has a sports team hears, which is, they're driving economic development, jobs, blah, blah, blah. None of it's true. Absolutely none of it is true. It's akin to arguing that if your favorite restaurant closes, you're going to starve. Of course you're not going to starve. You go to other restaurants. If one of your sports entertainment options goes away, you spend that entertainment money somewhere else. Mm-hmm. The research shows there's just no economic impact. Now, again, you can say we're proud to have it. You can say it's great for the community. That's wonderful. And if the governor and the legislature and all these people just said, look, we like having them here. Let's spend $2-3 billion to keep them. That's a fine argument. It's when they get into all these... I'm censoring myself. It's when
Don't worry, we got a dump button here.
It's when they get into all these claims about how we're going to be better off for it. The teams are a tiny part of our gross domestic product. They employ a tiny fraction of a percentage of our workforce. And especially if our fear is that we're going to lose the teams because they move a few miles west, the regional impact is going to be zero. So it's a difficult argument for him to make. I hope it's not successful, but I keep waiting for the good argument that I haven't thought of to come out.
Well, Cindy O'Loughlin, Senate President, was on the show last hour. Patrick Tuohy is here right now in the Show Me Institute, joining us on KCMO. She basically said, and this is different from the Star Bond in the sense of they're not drawing a made-up district that then they take the additional tax revenues from to pay off the bonds. They're just saying tax revenues from the stadiums will basically then be allowed to pay off a percentage of the bonding that they do on behalf of upgrades and builds and things like that.
It would be nice to know what the teams were going to be building. It would be nice to know if we had, term sheet, if we had some sort of cost estimates, but we don't. We're offering them subsidies and we don't even know what they want yet. It's so backwards. And then the other thing I would say is that this vote allows the legislature. Basically, what you're saying is, okay, so what we're going to do, guys, is if we lose the teams, we will lose this $50 million a year in state tax revenue. So we're going to offer them a package that gives them that. So the legislature can say, well, either I vote no and we lose $50 million a year, or I vote yes and we lose $50 million a year. They should just vote no and I think call the Chiefs and Royals bluff. I don't think they're going anywhere. I don't think the Star Bond offer from Kansas is enough for them to pick up and move.
Yeah. Do you think, though, that the argument or the offer is a better one potentially than the Star Bond offer? Not from a team perspective, from a taxpayer perspective.
No. Look, the idea that we're going to put a $50 million hole in the Missouri state budget to keep the teams means that, well, you live on the Kansas side, means that plenty of people on the Missouri side are going to have to pay to make up for that. We're going to have to, even if we never go to a game, we're going to be in effect subsidizing the Chiefs and the Royals because the state will have to make up that revenue somehow, and they're either going to spend less on important programs or they're going to raise our taxes to fill that hole. So, no, from taxpayers, for taxpayers, this is choose your loss. We're going to lose money. I was on with Kevin Kietzman last week, and he kept talking about what was good for Clark Hunt. Look, Clark Hunt's going to be fine, right? No matter what happens, he's going to make money. He's a bright guy. He's got bright people around him. I'm not worried about the Clark Hunts and the John Shermans. They're going to be fine. I'm worried about the taxpayers on both sides of state line because this is just a bad deal.
I think we're going to end up here if Missouri doesn't do anything. I think that Kansas will extend its Star Bond offer 1 year anyway.
Yes.
Why wouldn't they?
No, I think they will, and the team still won't move because the offer, the types of offers that teams can get from Missouri, whether it's the sales tax that Jackson County pays or whether it's the taxes that Quentin Lucas says he wants to increase to give to them, are a better inducement. They're not good deals. I'm not advocating for them.
Yeah.
But Missouri has a lot of horrible laws that allow us to give away taxpayer money in a lot of different ways. We can put together a better deal than Kansas can. So I think, what I think is going to happen is the legislature will fail to pass this. I'm not betting any money on this, but the legislature fails to pass this. Kansas extends it. The Royals and the Chiefs end up staying where they are because they are getting such a great deal right now at the Truman Sports Complex.
But we still don't even know where, especially the Royals, want to be and what they want to build.
No,
and that gets back to your point earlier of this thing is so ass backwards.
Thank you.
Nobody, this is like hiring, the handyman before you even started building your brand new home that you want to do construction on.
I tweeted out an image the other day. I made a meme, and it's just the Kehoe saying, all right, guys, what's it going to take? And they both respond, how much do you have? I get it. From their point of view, they're going to squeeze every dollar, every penny out of Jackson County, Kansas City, and Missouri taxpayers. I get it. That's what's good for them. And if they don't have to give us those details to get the money, they won't. I wouldn't either. If somebody said, I want you to work on my house, I'd say, well, here's the bill. I'm like, well, I don't know what you're going to do. Like, well, if you're going to pay the bill, I'll give you the bill.
Let's be honest, too, about this June 30 deadline. And I think John Sherman's a good man. I've had him on the show. I do think while, yes, you're right, he does want taxpayer involvement, I do think he wants to make sure this team is here for the long term. He's never threatened to go somewhere else. He hasn't done what other owners have done on that front. But they have blown past every one of their own deadlines for 2.5 years now.
Yeah.
Suddenly they're on a June 30th deadline. No, you're not.
No.
Call their bluff on the deadline nonsense. That is the biggest bunch of insulting BS that I've heard from anyone involved in the last 6 months. Suddenly you got a June 30th deadline. You don't even know where you want to be. How do you have a June 30th deadline?
If you had told me a year ago after the April 2 vote that it would be a year and a half and we still wouldn't have any details about what the Royals want, I wouldn't have believed you. In fact, I said at that debate that they're going to come right back to the table. I am amazed. And again, I know of people who are fans of a downtown ballpark who are frustrated because even they don't know what Sherman wants. And so, look, I'm sure there's a lot of exhaustion in the city, in the county, and in the state because all these guys, all these politicians want to play ball, but Sherman won't tell them what he wants. And that's hugely frustrating. And so, again, to get back to where we started, Kehoe's kind of staking his political capital to have taxpayers make the first move, make the first offer, while what we're being asked to support is still vague.
Very vague. I mean, it's not even vague. There's nothing.
Right.
There's nothing.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so frustrated because I think that good, smart people in Missouri and in Kansas are playing the fool. They're absolutely debasing themselves. They are embarrassing themselves by falling over backwards to support a team that, again, is a tiny fraction of the economy of the jobs in this area.
There are, I know, powerful people down in Jeff City in the legislature who are telling me they're Kehoe allies, but they're like, listen, we don't like how this is going.
No.
And we don't want to be played the fool, and we want to call their bluff. But if Kehoe uses enough political capital and equity on this, then, the deal may ultimately get done. So your prediction right now is that special election leads to no deal for the Chiefs and the Royals.
Okay, so I don't want to make a prediction, but right now I am surprised that this is as weak as it is. I, again, have been in Missouri 20 years. I am used to losing every time. I am used to being disappointed. I am guardedly allowing myself to be optimistic that this actually won't go anywhere because I think everybody can smell that this deal is no good. The question is, how much is Kehoe willing to give away on other things to get this deal?
Yeah. I'll take the other side of you, not because I want to, but just my prediction. I think they will get it done.
Again, that is completely reasonable, and history tells me that's exactly what's going to happen. But I'm hearing so many cracks and so many people, again, left, right, and center, who are skeptical of this.
You're right. I mean, it's not a partisan deal. Republicans, there's a portion of them that don't like it. Kind of the Freedom Caucus members, I guess you dub them, don't like it. A lot of Democrats just don't want to play ball with the Republicans, and they're going to have to get to 18 votes in the Senate out of 34 to get it done. So there'll have to be some arm twisting there, but we'll see. I think that simple majority is what will allow this thing to pass. Just got to get to 18.
And by the way, the cost is going to go up because the Cardinals are watching this saying, we want some too.
Absolutely. Patrick Tuohy, good to see you, man.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Patrick Tuohy with the Show Me Institute. What If Wednesday? 3 questions next. And then Kansas Senate President Ty Masterson at 9:05. We'll get the Kansas response to the drama in Jeff City and whether or not they may want to extend those star bonds coming up. And now let's do our giveaway for the Cody Johnson tickets. He will be at Thunder Ridge Nature Arena on Saturday, August 23rd, down in the Ozarks. Great venue. It will be a great show. And we will take the 7th caller right now, 913-408-7957. See Cody Johnson at Thunder Ridge Nature Arena in August, courtesy of KCMO Talk Radio. 913-408-7957.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM.
All right, who won the Cody Johnson tickets there, John?
Mitch and Lacine. Looking forward to the trip down to the Ozarks to check out the Cody Johnson show with Ian Munsick and Randall King.
All right, congratulations. And that is on Saturday, August 23rd. Good stuff. Let's do it here on KCMO.
KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7. It's time for What If Wednesday.
What if, instead of having you on this radio station, there was somebody else?
All right, John, what is on the rundown for a What If Wednesday here?
What if Missouri called the Royals and the Chiefs bluff?
Well, I think we'd be doing the same old song and dance in literally 1 year from now. Missouri, in part, called this special session. Governor Kehoe technically called the special session, I think, because he's feeling some of the heat as not wanting to be the governor that loses one or both of these professional sports franchises to Kansas. But if he said, hey, you guys may have a June 30 deadline, we got nothing for you, I don't think anything would change in the short term. I think the teams would say, okay, we got to figure out what Jackson County can do. Maybe the Royals look at Clay. Kansas would extend its star bond offer by 12 months, which they can do very quickly and very easily, and we would just be status quo. Instead, we have this artificial deadline of June 30th, and I can tell you there are a lot of Republicans in Jeff City who are not happy about being called back for this special session for the Chiefs and the Royals. It doesn't mean it won't pass, but I know they're not happy about having to go back down there for what they perceive to be as a made-up artificial deadline. And the perception on their end is we've got to go back to work down here in Jeff City because the Chiefs and the Royals are strong-arming us on this deadline that doesn't actually exist. So if Missouri just said, hey, we're happy to help, but we don't know what you want to do. We don't really know where you want to be. And here's what could be the real potential embarrassment for the state of Missouri. What if they pass this package in a special session and then the end of June comes and the Royals and Chiefs say they're going to Kansas anyway? How freaking embarrassing would that be? You are setting yourself up potentially for a real black eye if you're the Missouri legislature. What's the old saying? When you throw the football, two bad things can happen, right?
Yeah.
Only one good
There's
thing
three
can happen.
things that can happen and two are bad.
Two are bad. Well, right now, I mean, there are two bad options here. First off, they don't pass the Chiefs and the Royals funding next week. That'll look bad. That'll help Kansas. Or part two of this is they pass it and they leave anyway. I don't think it's likely, but it's not impossible. So we got to keep an eye on that. What's next, John?
What if the Democrats examine their messaging to biological males?
Well, considering they want to spend $20 million on re-examining their messaging to, as you noted, biological males.
I was specific.
The first thing is to drop the use of the phrase biological men. There are men and there are women. And the sooner that the party can figure that out, they might actually make some ground up with young male voters. That they're just hemorrhaging left and right. And could you get somebody who's willing to be a face of your party that's like a dude's dude? I'm sorry, Mayor Pete growing a beard doesn't make him a guy's guy. It doesn't work that way. Okay, can you find somebody? Do yourself a favor. And until you do that, I mean, just there's men and women and get some tea in the room and you'll be A-okay. But that's not evident it's happening anytime soon, John.
All right. What if Mark now has the most impressive educational credentials on the show?
Do we have to call him Mr. Parlay Van Sickle now? Is that what we have to do now that Mark has an online certificate from Harvard? What do you want us to call you there, Marky Mark?
You can just call me Mark. That's fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Even with this big Harvard deal that you now got over the weekend that took you 2 hours to get in the middle of the night when you couldn't sleep, you're not going to start big timing us with this Harvard thing now?
I don't need a doctor title or anything.
Okay. All right.
M. Lowcock at edu.
That's Professor Van Sickle to you here on KCMO. That's what the callers have to do now. When they call up, if Mark answers, refer to him as Professor.
Citizen politics master. That's what I am now.
Is that what you are?
Yeah.
Citizens politics master. See what you are?
Yeah.
Citizens politics master.
He's
CPM.
credited, man. He's bona credited, man. He's bona fide.
Man. 4-year business degree from Villanova. Why did I waste my time? Unbelievable. All right, there's your What If Wednesday on KCMO. Ty Masterson, Kansas Senate President. Will they extend the star bond offer? We'll ask him that and more coming up next. Kansas Senate President Ty Masterson is here on KCMO. He's fresh off a trip to D.C. around the Make America Healthy Again movement. We will talk to him about that. Of course, we also have a lot of news on the Missouri side of the state line. They are going back to a special session to try to come up with what they would say is a competitive offer to compete with Kansas on the Star Bond deal. Of course, that offer ends at the end of June. So that is right now a deadline that is being perceived to be out there. And Senate President Ty Masterson now joins us on KCMO. Senator, good morning. First off, how do you feel about Kansas's odds of potentially landing one of these two or maybe both of these pro sports teams in the next few weeks?
Hey, good morning, Pete. Who knows in the next few weeks, right? It's the deadline's out there, but I've actually seen that more as a deadline for Kansas, not a deadline for the teams, whether or not we feel like we're still in it, right? And we'll make that decision. We'll see. Be interesting to see what Missouri does. I'm still cautiously optimistic, right? I wasn't going to be the guy that showed up to the gunfight with a water gun, so we put our best offer on the table. We'll just see what happens. Kansas has nothing to lose, right? We're giving up something we didn't have to get something we don't have, right? I mean, we're in a good spot, so we'll just see what happens.
Well, I would agree with that. So this deadline that I've, heard leadership talk about here of June 30th, it can be extended another year, right? And you would be part of that decision making. So why would you not extend the offer if the teams were to ask you to extend the offer one more year?
I mean, that's a good question. Yeah, it is. The LCC, which I actually chair this year, does make that decision, and it's up to a year, right? We could come in and decide to give them 30 days or 90 days or anything up to a year under the law. I think the reason you would not extend is if it seems like it's already concluded, right? If they've decided to stay in Missouri or if we get tired of the political conversation. So I think that's what you'll see. You get through the end of this month, we'll see where we're at. We'll see what Missouri's doing. We'll see where the conversations are. And I think what you'll see is if we feel like we're still in the game, to say, that we could see some extension. But I don't think there's a lot of interest just to do it, right, to stay on the table. But if it feels like we are on the table and it's legitimate, it's going to be something here in the near future to a decision, you could see a short extension.
So it sounds to me like you're cognizant of the fact that you don't want to end up getting played in this thing.
Fair. That was who wants to be played?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I just didn't want to be the guy that showed up with nothing. I mean, we win either way. I mean, worst case scenario for us, Missouri puts some up, they stay together, they're still there, and we still get to enjoy the games, right? I mean, that works for me.
Yeah. So, and you said, you chair the committee that could extend the Star Bond offer up to 1 year. Is that something where, like, if you decide on June 29th you want to do that, you can do that, or do you need some lead time on that decision?
No, as a matter of fact, we're probably I had that meeting tentatively scheduled for like the 18th, which it has a whole bunch of other things we do. That would just be one aspect of it. We'll probably push that meeting through the end of June just to wait and see what happens. So we're fully informed to make that decision, but we could just do it that day.
Okay. But that meeting now scheduled for the 18th of June, you're saying you're going to push that back more towards the end of the month?
Yeah, it was all tentative anyway, but with all the hubbub and the special session coming on Monday, no sense coming in if we don't have all the information we need to make the decision. So it was all tentative anyway. So we'll just push it back to the end of the month.
Okay. Gotcha. What more information do you feel like you would need to make that decision to extend the Star Bond offer?
I would really need to see internally from the teams that we're still viably in the game, right? I mean, I'm not just in here to play around. So if there's still a real conversation with real potential, you'll see some extension. If not, we'll let them have it.
And you would say as well, like, there is no scenario where the state of Kansas would ever back these bonds, or is that potentially possible?
No, not in my world. I'm not a huge incentives fan in general, but I'm also, like I said, not going to be the guy that shows up with the wrong weapon in the fight. I think it's like I don't think Trump is a big, he wants 200% tariffs. He's using it as a tool to get to, I mean, ideally you want zero tariffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm at. There is no scenario in which the Kansas taxpayers would be on the line for anything. That was from the very beginning. We wouldn't have put it up in the beginning, right? If ultimately a Kansas taxpayer if we had to raise a tax or put them online for anything, You would not have seen that come through the legislature, and that's not going to change. It's not like we're going to up the ante.
Okay.
I mean, we got, I'm all in. I'm here. It is. Here it is. This is our best foot forward, and go for it.
There is a perception that these star bonds just may not be able to generate the revenues needed to pay them back, and that the state backing any of this stuff would obviously be the backstop needed for investors. But you're saying no matter what, state's not going to be involved here in this. This is going to be basically a private deal.
100% correct. And you can see that because the star bonds, the way they're structured, it's the bondholders. You've sold bonds for this that are they're on the line, and they might need to restructure the bonds. You've seen some of that, but there's no scenario in which the Kansas taxpayer is going to back this thing up.
Okay. And then the other part of it, though, that always gets asked is, do you have any idea what the lines of the star bond district need to be to make this work?
I do not. We'll see that'll all be part of the proposal, right? That's all part of the negotiations between the teams and the developers and Commerce. It will come to us. I'll have some pre-idea what they're working on, but it'll come to us with a proposed district. And
then the developers and the teams would want to basically believe they can raise the extra revenues to pay off those bonds.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And we're not going to be stupid.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. We are not going to be stupid. That is the quote there from the Senate President, Ty Masterson, on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. That'll be worth watching. We'll be talking to you about that here in a few weeks. But I know that you were in D.C. last week for a Make America Healthy Again event with RFK and President Trump. What was the purpose of that trip, and what did you learn on it?
So, it was a good trip. The invitation came because Kansas is trying to take a step forward, kind of against, Governor Kelly. And we were trying to, for example, reform SNAP, the supplemental nutrition program, government assistance for food to take out, pop and candy, things that aren't necessarily nutritious. And so that's how we got the invitation. We ultimately forced the governor to request a waiver through our budget line item. But it was fascinating. I got to meet RFK and Jay Bhattacharya and have some real conversations. He's loving life right now. And I think he believes himself to be in the best position ever, right? He's got kind of Trump's backing, but he's able to hyper-focus on that area that he is most impassioned about. So we are looking to do some things in there. We're mowing through the report to see what we can do. But, what I love right now is I feel like real science is back on the table, right? Not the progressive left science where a man can be a woman and the COVID, shots the same as the polio vaccine kind of stuff, right? I feel like they're really looking at, do we need red dye 40? Do we want a petroleum chemical in the food? I'm glad we're having those real conversations, because as long as there's truth in it, if it's true science, I'm willing to have that conversation, and I want to be helpful.
So what is your perception on what you can bring back to potentially state law? You mentioned food stamps, things of that nature. What else could be on the table for a tool in Kansas to further that Make America Healthy Again movement?
Well, I met the guy that's he's kind of the F in FDA, and they're talking about some of the things around, like the food dye I just mentioned, and I think that makes sense. There's things there we can do. Further, I love that they came out yesterday, right, with the COVID shot, pulling back on the COVID shot, because we worked hard, clear back when it was all Fauciism, right? Kansas called itself back into special session for the first time in state history from the legislature.
What are other states? I'm sure that you had conversations with some of the other state leaders, notably, I'm sure, Republican state leaders, where you do have a lot of these states that, frankly, are some of the more unhealthy states in the country. Kansas is not on that top 10 list of most unhealthy states, but what are they saying, and how we can move the ball forward on this, and how maybe there is some state cooperation, if any at all?
So this whole thing was definitely focused on the states. There were several governors in that front row there at the event. They do see that, because Congress is obviously cumbersome, and there is a focus to come and initiate a lot of this at the state level. So, and all because we're not on the bottom on that particular thing doesn't mean we can't be better at it, and I'm glad to help. I think it's going to be exciting when we get a different governor in Kansas. We can do things by simple majorities.
Well, that's true as well. Speaking of that, there are some rumblings that you may have interest in running for governor. Where are you at on that idea?
So, yeah, fair question. Well, let me just say this. I've been extremely humbled by some of the people I respect inside of politics and friends that have been asking me to do this and putting it together. I am just a state senator, and I realize that. I have a good record of leadership. So right now we're evaluating the money side of it. Right, you got to be able to raise the money, get the message out, and understand it. But we don't have any big names, they're being talked about now. So it's an open field. So we'll make that decision probably here by the end of June.
Oh, okay. So you're kind of like the Star Bond. Your self-imposed deadline is coming up here in the next few weeks.
Yeah. So I throw that. Even that's not a hard deadline. Let me just call it this summer, right?
Okay.
It seems awful early, right? Our filing deadline is not till June of next year.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there is value in getting out and getting the name out and demonstrating your record to people.
Yeah. Well, as someone who's been on the front lines for the last several years of Governor Kelly, obviously, I'm sure that there's a part of you that's seen a lot of things that you want to do differently from a leadership perspective. So it's going to be, listen, Senator, it's going to be a fascinating next several months in this state leading up to 2026. And whether it's professional sports teams or, making America healthy again, whatever it might be, you're going to be at the center of it. So what should Kansans be expecting here in the months ahead in this state? We appreciate you joining us. Glad you got back safely from D.C., and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Pete. Have a great day.
You as well. Ty Masterson, appreciate him hopping on the show. I don't know how any of this is going to end up playing out, but being self-aware enough, if you are leadership in Kansas, to know that you do not want to be played a fool in this song and dance with the Chiefs and the Royals is an important, I think, first step. And I heard that loud and clear from Ty Masterson in that conversation just now. I don't know about you, but I heard it loud and clear. 913-4087-95.7. That's how you join us in the 9 o'clock hour here on KCMO. And if Kansas wants to lead the way with its legislative body on the MAHA movement, sign me up. Make Laura Kelly veto this stuff. And she will. She will. But make her veto this stuff. Put the screws to her on this, all right? There you go. Well, you probably have a graduation or two around the corner if you haven't had one already. And if you already had one for maybe a child, a niece, a nephew, whatever it might be, get on it. It's okay to be late with the gift when you're talking about a diamond gift from Diamonds Direct, whatever it might be. Whether your budget's under $500 up to 100x that number. And let's not go crazy here. My point is, though, they've got everything you could possibly need at Diamonds Direct. And they have an incredible staff that will always take great care of you. Angie, Tom, and the entire team will give you the white glove service you expect from the best jewelry store in Kansas City. And they also have the best value. They cut out the middlemen, so you just get the best prices you could want in the Kansas City area. They're right over at 119th and Row. And you go over there, get a glass of champagne if you want. They got a little play area for the kids as well, which is helpful if we're in there and dropping something off, picking something up. I'm not worried about the kids destroying tens of thousands of dollars in diamonds or something like that, which, I would have those concerns of if they didn't have the little play area for the kids. But they have it. They are as family friendly as you would imagine. And whether it is that big graduation gift, whether it's that upcoming engagements, the big anniversary gift, whatever you need, Diamonds Direct will hook you up. Go to diamondsdirect.com or start shopping now at 119th and Row.
Dave Ramsey here, and you're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now airing on FM at 95.7.
925. So we just got done with Ty Masterson, the Kansas Senate president. And, of course, we got the trolling on the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, I bet Ty Masterson was all against Michelle Obama's school lunch improvements. Well, I don't think Ty was in the Senate then. He may have been. I have no idea. But, I don't think he was. I don't know this for certain. But that was a long time ago now. And I will say that that was one thing that in hindsight does make Republicans look bad. Yeah, in hindsight when it was like, Michelle Obama will not tell our kids what to eat. But here's what actually happened with that Michelle Obama school lunch deal. It wasn't just like some political blowback. The other part of it is that big food lobbyists basically told Michelle Obama, oh, no, you don't. No, you're not going to go down this. Obama getting pushback from Republicans. It wasn't just that. It was the big food lobbyists and corporatists who were like, hey, you're not going to mess with the food that we are giving to your school kids. You're not going to do it. It wasn't just the Republican blowback. So while she spearheaded that Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, which included new nutritional standards for school lunches and was part of a key role in her Let's Move initiative to combat childhood obesity, she also got a lot of people blowing back on her who were involved with the big food industry. So I just want to make sure that history is properly told on that whole deal. Yeah, Republicans, I think, looked like fools in hindsight. There's no doubt about it. They should have gone along with it. I know they couldn't go along with anything that was Obama related at the time, but that was one where it's like, first off, it's the first lady. We all want our kids to be healthier. They got to get out there and exercise more. They looked like a horse's butt, especially now that they are, the leaders of the Make America Healthy Again movement. And yes, now Democrats look like the horse's butt because they're the ones who can't get behind some of the basic good things like getting addictive food dyes out of our foods that other parts of the world don't use. Like, why would you be against that just because of Trump? Same thing is happening right now on the other side. So this is not a difficult thing that we should all be able to come together on. Unfortunately, politics always gets in the way. And while I'm happy to call out Republicans for how they may have been too much Obama derangement syndrome 15 years ago, can Democrats do that now with their own side? Because I'm not seeing a lot of it, as much as I would love to see it. Coming up next, our caller of the day, right after the news on KCMO Talk Radio. And the caller, well, it was about masks in Kansas City next.
From the nation's heartland, it's Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
Yeah, I'll give you this, Kansas City Star. Sure. Absolutely, Toriano Porter. I got you, buddy. I got your back on this one. It's just hysterical how they don't even understand their own hypocrisy on this deal. Toriano Porter writing for the Kansas City Star, after masked white nationalist march, Kansas City should consider anti-masking law. Okay, if we were to go down the list of masked protesters around Kansas City for the last 5 years, 98% of them would be left-wing loons. Now, they would be doing it under the guise and the ruse of COVID masking, and I'm just protecting myself from COVID. But a mask is a mask is a mask is a mask. There's got to be, if Dr. Seuss was alive today, he'd do something with that. Okay? But now it's like, you want to play that game of no masked protesters in Kansas City, I'll do it with you. I'll do it with you. Like, yeah, okay, there was this group, Patriot Front, marching through the streets of downtown Kansas City over the weekend. I still have so many questions about that deal. These guys show up in a U-Haul truck, about 100 of them. They march around with their American flags, Confederate flags, and upside-down American flags. And then they just jump in a U-Haul truck and they leave. Like, where did they go? Where did they come from? What were they protesting? Like, none of those answers are out there, which just stinks to high heaven. But that's not the point of this conversation. The point is to say, while all of these guys were marching around the streets of Kansas City in their khakis and their Navy T-shirts and their masks, suddenly now one of the top columnists at the Kansas City Star is like, boy, we shouldn't let people protest with masks on. Sure. And next time we have one of those Elon Musk Tesla cry fests where you guys call him a Nazi on State Line Road, or you have a Hamas sympathizing protest on the plaza, let's have that ordinance, make sure it's enacted. Let's make sure that people can't wear their masks. And if you're going to do they're wearing masks because they're afraid of COVID, spare me the BS. I might have been born at night, but it wasn't last night. If you want to have an anti-masking ordinance at protests, then trust me, that is going to hurt the wokest of woke protests that happen in this town. And I guess that will also hurt 100 Patriot Front guys marching around Kansas City. I don't even know where they're from. It's not clear to me any of them are from the Kansas City area.
Exactly.
I mean, they jumped in a U-Haul truck. You don't usually jump in a U-Haul truck to go back to the Lenexa. All right? That's just my assumption here. They apparently rented the U-Haul trucks, used them for this protest, and then jumped back in the U-Haul trucks downtown and left somewhere. I assume they returned the trucks. So I don't know where these guys are from.
Got to fill it back up with gas, though, first.
You're right. Don't want to get hit with that $5 a gallon charge when you rent a car and don't fill up your tank. I made that mistake coming back from Puerto Rico because I couldn't read the damn street signs. I didn't want to miss my flight, and I didn't know what was going on. So I just said, I'm going to bite the bullet. That's the only time in my adult life I bit the bullet on the gas charge with the rental car. I won't make that mistake again. But I am all on board with this, and this led to our caller of the day on KCMO.
It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day on KCMO Talk Radio. Now on FM at 95.7.
Jim is out east. Go ahead, Jim. You're on KCMO, my man. Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. My question is whether or not this would apply to law enforcement, because the ICE officials really are the ones that's trying to keep them on to keep from having personal retaliations.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that angle there, Jim. That's a very good point. I can't imagine it would apply to law enforcement because for those folks, oftentimes it's about their personal safety and there's a reason that they're wearing those masks. So I don't think it would apply to law enforcement, but I suppose that conversation can be had if and when the city takes up an ordinance like this.
But that may be Kansas City Star's reason for writing this is to get that in there for that.
Oh, so they can then out cops and out FBI agents.
Correct.
I didn't think it was a good thought by Jim. I don't believe there's a lot of 3D chess going on there at the Kansas City Star. I think they think about just like what happened in the last week, and they say, well, we've got to have a reaction to the Patriot Front group marching around. No more masks at protests, without having any realization that all their favorite protesters around Kansas City will suddenly be outed on State Line Road, the plaza, downtown, World War I, everything else. Like, you really think, as nuts as some of those people are, they're wearing masks in 2025 because they're afraid of COVID? No, they're hiding their faces. We all know the game here and what's going on.
Those with masks have jobs, and those that don't have jobs.
That's true. Now, speaking of law enforcement, which Jim just brought up, Channel 9 had this story last night. Kansas City Police is facing budget cuts after recent lawsuit settlements. So a couple of recent lawsuit settlements mean budget cuts could be coming for KCPD. You had multiple multi-million-dollar settlements happen over the last few months. $4.1 million for the family of Cameron Lamb. That was the Eric DeValcanair case. $14 million federal lawsuit settled for Ricky Kidd in his case. A judge ruled Kidd was wrongly convicted of a 1996 double homicide. He spent 23 years in prison. So KCPD had only budgeted $3.5 million in their funds to use to settle lawsuits. That means they have about a $14.5 million shortfall. Chief Stacey Graves told Channel 9, we're just going to have to make cuts. This is what you do. You know, you come across some of these situations. You know, this last lawsuit was large, and it was something that had occurred decades ago. Now, these cuts come as KCPD is actively recruiting more officers. Here's one thing I'm going to ask Quentin Lucas tomorrow when he's on the show, because there's always kind of that deer in the headlights routine on this issue. KCPD gets a budget. What I can never understand and can't get a good answer from anybody on, and it's not just City Hall, the mayor's office, it's also from like the police, the union folks. They get a budget every year. Is that budget for a fully staffed police department of 1,400 officers, or is it not? We know they're hundreds of officers short of their goal. Is it for what is a realistic expectation for how many people they expect to hire this year? Is it for what they hope to hire this year? How do they do that? And I've asked a lot of people about it privately and on the show. It's been a while since I've asked somebody on the show. But I've asked people privately about this, and no one ever has a good answer. And it's like anything else, any other budget, no matter how big or small your company is, right? If you're running a budget and part of that budget is based on what you expect your company's growth when it comes to employment to be, is that based on your ultimate goal or where you're at on that recruitment and employment? Because if they've got a budget for 1,400 officers and they only have, and I'm estimating here, 1,200 on the force, then what's going on with the monies for the other 300 cops that aren't hired, that you're, let's be honest, not going to have hired anytime soon? You got to recruit them. You got to get them through training. That's a 6 to 12 process easily, if not an 18-month process. And no one has ever given me a straight or good answer on this. And as much as I'm all about back in the blue, supporting the cops, especially based on how the last few years have gone in not just this community, but in this country, just like Doge, I'm not about promoting government waste because it's an organization I like. I said about Doge, you know what? Go after the FBI, go after the Pentagon, look at all of them. I guarantee you'll find a bunch of waste across the board. So it doesn't matter if it's a group that I like and will have the backs of. If there's wasteful spending, there's wasteful spending. And the last thing this town needs, as we finally, it seems like, get some momentum coming out of the stupidity of the last few years in terms of how we treated and talked about law enforcement, the last thing we would need is cuts at KCPD. We've got this brand new entertainment district plan going on, right? Where, you have cops now focused on these entertainment districts and focused on these sideshows and everything else. The last thing you want to do is start, first off, hurting morale and lowering your body count to fight crime in this town. I can't fathom what that would do to KCPD. So when Channel 9's running this story and they had a Board of Police Commissioners meeting, this is the week to talk to Mayor Lucas about this, especially when property crime is still a major issue. You had Frank Serrano speaking yesterday at the Board of Police Commissioners meeting, and he's a board member for the Waldo Neighborhood Association, and he came out to talk about the increasing property crime that they've had, that we've talked about on the show. You cannot, if you are Mayor Lucas, if you are the city council, I know paying out these lawsuits totally stinks, but you cannot risk cutting police officers right now when you're finally starting to slowly turn the corner on the issue of crime in Kansas City, at least certain facets of crime. They've got a lot of problems, but certain facets of crime they're finally starting to get a handle on. And the last thing you need is cutting police officers at this moment in Kansas City's history. You can't do it. We'll wrap up the show with you coming up on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. And we are streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Kevin Kietzman, Uncanceled at 10 o'clock. MSNBC making fun of its own. We'll have some fun with that next.
Stream Mundo in the Morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Even MSNBC is making fun of their own. New York Times reporting over the weekend, we had some fun with this yesterday, that Democrats are set to launch a $20 million campaign over how to reach young men that are fleeing the Democratic Party. And they even have a little acronym for this that they have rolled out as well. Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan. They are calling it SAM. So creative. $20 million to figure out how to talk to dudes. They can stream KCMO Talk Radio for free on the app. You know you can do that, right? You download the app and you'll get a push notification here and there. And it doesn't cost $20 million. If you want to give us $20 million for a budget, we'll gladly take it. But it doesn't cost you anything. And you could learn how to talk to young men, which this radio station happens to do very effectively. Or you could just try to pay people who have no clue how to talk to regular, everyday, common sense guys who for the last 10 years have basically been told they're the problem in America. And now it's like, I can't imagine why these people don't want to vote for us. It's like the girlfriend who loses her boyfriend. She beats him up all the time. She treats him like crap. She's always nagging on him. He can't do anything he wants to do. He can't hang out with the boys. And then he dumps her, and she's like, oh, why did he dump me? Can't believe this happened.
All their work, and they'll try to create this composite profile of the typical American male. I can't wait to see it.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be like something AI throws together.
Yeah. It'll be Pete Buttigieg. That's who it'll be.
The typical American male likes sports ball.
Yeah.
Right.
It'll be if Tim Walz and Pete Buttigieg had a baby and grew a beard and wore skinny jeans, that would be their all-American male.
Skinny.
That would be it right there. So even on MSNBC, this is Democratic strategist Joel Payne commenting on this.
Yeah, good questions. One, let me save the folks from the Times and all the other great, print outlets some time. If you dig in on what Democrats are researching right now, you're going to find a lot of silly stuff. You're going to find people asking a lot of questions, people asking about syntax and do I drop the G from this word and this and that, and there's going to be a lot of that. So let me just warn everybody, that process is going to be very obnoxious for this 40-something. I would also say, we're really talking about young men, right? Young men who Democrats have not figured out a consistent pitch for how to get in front of. And I think it starts with authenticity.
Ah, yes, authenticity. No one screams authenticity like Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg and AOC. You know, the most authentic person they have is Bernie Sanders. And that's not really saying much because the guy who's fighting the oligarchy has 3 homes and has never made a job in his life and had a real job in his life. But when Bernie's your most authentic guy, that says a lot about your lack of authenticity. Where's Chuck Schumer when I need him to put a piece of cheese on an uncooked hamburger on the grill and be like, I'm ready for the big 4th of July party? Not only is Donald Trump, whatever you think of him, wildly authentic, in a zero-sum game of politics, your own authenticity can be helped when your opponents scream unauthentic. And no matter how hard Oprah tried, and Megan Thee Stallion tried, and Beyonce tried to make Kamala Harris palatable and authentic, it failed colossally. Just like with Hillary when it came to Bruce Springsteen and Bon Jovi and all these other people. They failed. You can't teach authenticity. Either you have it or you don't. Either you are or you aren't. And frankly, there's a lot of Republicans who are trying to be Trump, and it's just not authentic. You got to be you. J.D. Vance has perfectly balanced having that Trump strain in him while being his own guy. He's not trying to be a mini-me of Donald Trump. He's authentic. And for the most part, Democrats have failed on that front colossally. Wrap up the show. Blake in Kansas City, go ahead. You got a minute, my man. What's happening?
Hey, old buddy. As much as I'd like to see the Democrats put something together, if not just for the opposition party being a formidable opponent to the right and how they're reaching, the youth and all kinds of different union workers, people that the right never focused on, but has organically broadened their fold. Yeah, and the Democrats have just lost the thread. They're getting owned by a whole other side of the industry that's just clowning on them and all the stupid stuff they do. And they want to spend $20 million to advertise on video games.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. You're not even close.
Yeah.
They're not even close.
They're not. I mean, they're not in the ballpark. And they tried some of this in the end of the 2024 election. Some of this. Hey, we're going to have Tim Walz out there as the old ball coach and talk about video games. And they somehow thought that if they advocated for more pornography, young men would run into their arms. What you're seeing is actually the opposite right now. There is a resurgence of faith, of Christianity in this country amongst young people that America has not seen in decades. That's not a coincidence. And that's not being motivated by people saying, I need more pornography in my life. People realize, and they're starting to realize, I think, especially young men, what matters in life and what they want in life. And that is what human beings have wanted for the most part since the beginning of time. Community, faith, and family. And those are three things that, frankly, the Democratic Party are not on board with. Kevin Kietzman, Uncanceled, is next.